Hello and welcome to the MinnMax Show, a place about games, friends, and getting better. I'm here, I'm Ben Hansen, and I'm not alone. I'm joined by Suriel Vasquez.
Hello.
Welcome, Suriel. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I like being here.
Today,
Thank
right
you.
now, in
Yes.
so many ears around the world.
That's
Thank
right.
you. Kyle Hilliard.
Hello, hi.
Hello. And Jake.
No robot voice this episode, in theory.
In theory. We'll see how it goes. Changing up the recording process a little bit. And Jacob Geller.
Hi there.
Jacob Geller, you've been on before. Yes?
Yes, I was on the Deepest Dive.
That's
for
right,
Edith
for
Finch.
What Remains of Edith Finch. Former game, former intern, video essay extraordinaire. We had a standalone video all about your video essays as well. What is that wonderful YouTube channel where you do so many amazing things?
It's called Jacob Geller, just like me.
That's beautiful. I've seen a lot of your video essays, and I watched a recent one of yours all about ugly, ugly games, which was just
Yes.
like, you are the master, Mr. Geller, of not only YouTube views, but you're the master of an amazing headline. And seeing that is just so perfect. And it goes back to Jeff Gerstmann's opening line in his review for the first Kane and Lynch, where he called it an ugly, ugly game, which is amazing on Gerstmann's part, but then it's also amazing on your part, the fact that you remember that, or that stood out to you years later, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to use that framing of ugly, ugly games to now talk about Kane and Lynch and Max Payne and just that gritty era, and it perfectly encapsulates all of that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was kind of serendipitous. Blake Hester and I have been of Game Query and also a guest. We're talking about Max Payne 3 on a podcast that we were doing, and we were talking about potentially doing Kane and Lynch next. And he was actually the one who brought up the whole Gerstmann thing, which I was somehow not aware of. And then I started looking into. And
Wait,
was
like the
oh my
GameSpot
God.
thing you didn't know about?
Yeah, no, I
Oh
just
my God.
like I think I was so, especially as a kid, I was so into Game Informer that I like blocked out all other game news sites, and so I just didn't hear about it. And then I was like, this is a story.
I mean, there was a Penny Arcade comic and everything, right?
The world
Penny
was
Arcade,
talking about
my
it.
favorite comic.
That was a huge deal. It was so weird. Like, I love GameSpot. That era of GameSpot I wasn't as into, but I liked earlier GameSpot, and so that was the big thing too. Is that being a huge fan of 1UP is like all the 1UP employees I remember went out and like protested outside the building during that moment as well. If you're not familiar, it's because Jeff Gerstmann was pressured and left his job ultimately because he gave Kane and Lynch a 6.0, and then the ad people at CBS at the time came down and said,
Having
not so
played
much.
Kane and Lynch recently, a generous score.
I can't imagine it's aged well. But anyways, check out Jacob Geller's YouTube channel, please. On this episode of the MinnMax Show, we're talking about new IP. Jacob Geller, you're a fresh voice in the industry, so in this episode, we're going to unpack some fresh games in the game industry this generation.
You're
unpack
our new
the
IP.
highs and lows. Hell yeah. And then we're going to get to community questions later on. Leo's going to be joining us as well. That should be fun. But a lot of people might be wondering, why aren't you talking about the Xbox showcase, the Microsoft showcase? We recorded this before that aired. If you want to see our reactions and thoughts on that overall, please check out MinnMax's YouTube channel. We'll have a reaction video. It'll be a lot of Kyle screaming about Halo Infinite, all that good stuff. I will be out of town, so I won't be on that, but we have Leo in charge of everything. It's going to be great, and I think all the other cohorts are going to be joining for that, so it should be a good time. And then we'll obviously unpack those games and everything that they revealed on the next episode of the MinnMax Show as well. So earlier this week, not quite the games showcase, but Microsoft released a ton of game demos on Xbox One. Did anybody get a chance to check out any of those?
I haven't. There are 70. I think more than 70, right?
I know. It's overwhelming. It's fun to see people in the MinnMax Discord kind of unpacking it as they go and figure out what the highlights are. When I tweeted out, like, hey, what do you recommend? It seems like a game called Cris Tales came up a lot. And so I checked that out. There's a free demo that's on Steam. It's been on Steam for a while, and it will continue to be on Steam, I'd imagine, even after it's pulled down from Xbox. But it's a really cool retro, well, to call it retro is maybe a stretch. It's an RPG in the vein of a Paper Mario meets Persona. Like Persona UI, Paper Mario mechanics in terms of combat and timing in combat. And then just like this overall vibe of Beauty and the Beast out of the gate. It's a really unique RPG that's coming out later this year from a new team. And it's just gorgeous. And it does this really cool thing too, where it splits the screen into thirds. So you can see the past, the present, and the future. So everywhere you're running, the screen's following you, so you're always in the present. But then if you just look off to the side, you can see like what's going to happen to these buildings and people in the future or where they came from in the past. It's a really cool mechanic, and it's one of those things that I was enjoying the demo so much, I'm like, I got to stop, because the idea of like playing through this twice, I'm not sure about. But once the game comes out, I definitely want to check it out. Cris Tales was the name of that one. Let's see, how's everybody else doing? Jacob, what have you been playing lately, man?
I've been playing, we were talking about it a little before the show, a lot of Hades, the Supergiant roguelike that's been in early access for a year and a half now, maybe? I can't remember. Time has no meaning. But it's
right.
been out for a while now, and I bought it when it was first available, and then just every kind of 6 months or so, I found myself going back and sinking a lot of time into it, and now it's almost done. The 1.0 update is coming soon, so it's not quite it doesn't have a bow on top of it yet, but
yeah,
it feels incredibly polished. There's a lot of content there, and it's so fun. Like, it's a really fun game.
That's the thing. Yeah, we played it for the Great Goaty Hunt. And it's one of those games that I've dabbled in here and there, and it's one of those that's like, I can't wait to sink my teeth into it. I'm waiting for the right time. And it seems like now might be the right time for buying it on PC, at least Epic Game Store or Steam, because they had their big content update, but it's not quite 1.0, so you can still feel super cool once the game goes 1.0, but being like, I knew it all along.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine based on where it ends now. I mean, it ends with you fighting Hades, and because it's a roguelike, it's like, well, that's, then you just kind of start over again. And they have kind of a funny thing where I'm like, you eventually beat this big boss, and then the voiceover's like, Zagreus thought he was walking out to his freedom, but actually he walked into a cleverly painted wall to look like a tunnel. And then it just shows the, like, you died, and then you go back to the beginning. And so it's clearly like there will be an ending there at some point, and it's not there yet. So they're still kind of messing around with it.
Right.
But content-wise, I mean, I have played, I think, 45 hours of it or whatever, and I still feel like there's a ton to go. So it's a big game already.
Yeah, it feels so good.
Do you think that there's like a narrative kind of theme that, like, do you see where the ending might be going? Do you think like there's a story that the game is trying to tell?
That's the one kind of question mark I have about it. And it's weird from Supergiant, because I feel like usually they have been incredibly good story games with surprisingly complex gameplay systems, but that's always like the second part of it. And Hades is like amazing, fun, complex gameplay first, and then there are a lot of characters, and they're all well written, but because of the roguelike format, nothing feels like it's really progressing that much. I just like learn a little more about each character every time I die, but I can't imagine what like an emotional climax of the game would be. So I'm curious. They might pull it off. They're really good at doing this kind of stuff, but for right now, I can't really imagine what it would be.
Yeah. Speaking of new IP, though, I mean, you got to give it up for Supergiant. Just nailing it with every entry so far. Just, hey, here's a bold new vision. Hey, here's a bold new vision. And just batting damn near 1,000 at this point.
It's wild. It's crazy how good all their games are.
Yeah. Okay. So in this episode, we're going to unpack, this is complicated, our favorite new IP of this generation, with an emphasis on potential to be prolific. Fertile ground for the future, because I don't want to jump to your list or anything, Kyle, but something like Inside, awesome new IP, not exactly, sprouting new life for generations to come, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, thank God.
I think it might have also made it on my list anyway, but we'll see.
Well, it did have that sequel, Inside Out.
Yeah, that's true. It already sold out at that point.
During our Limbo stream, Hanson, somebody suggested Inside 2, Outside, which I think would be pretty good.
It's brilliant, yeah. Yeah, it was the 10th anniversary of Limbo. If you want to watch Kyle and I play, it's on our Twitch channel. You can follow us there. Otherwise, it'll be up on our YouTube channel. I think on Friday, it's going to be airing over there. And so trying to find the dividing line for the generation is a little bit rickety, because you got 3DS handheld, kind of complicating things, but maybe we won't focus too much on that. It's not exactly a hotbed of new IP. And then the PC arena, it's like, well, maybe like fall 2013, holiday 2013, when the new consoles launch. It's like a nice, clean dividing line for PC overall. But trying to come up with the ground rules for new IP is trickier than you think, because just realize how many times something is connected to some franchise, and you really need to look back or stand back and appreciate those games that really are coming from nothing. It's weird to think that we are near the end of the generation. It's almost there. I feel like with Ghost of Tsushima releasing last week, it is a little bit of like, okay, as far as we know, is that the last big new IP for this generation? There's going to be some cross-gen stuff that we're looking forward to. You know, stuff like Gods and Monsters, whatever that's renamed to, stuff like that. But did you guys have any reflections on the generation as a whole? Or when you're trying to put your list together, did anything stand out in terms of just broad philosophical thoughts on this generation's new IP?
I mean, there weren't... I feel like I didn't come across anything comparable to like Mass Effect or something, where it was like a trilogy, you know, within one generation, like a big, you know, multi-years game spanning story. I feel like of all the ones I looked at, like the most we got were like maybe one or two sequels that were both pretty standalone with no like intent. No one had the confidence to be like, this is true, that we're starting this as a trilogy. I feel like we didn't see a lot of that this generation, you know?
Yeah. I think it has to do with the shift being more towards, let's make this series and plan out like multiple games, assuming this is going to be successful, and more around, here's this single entry that is going to go on forever. You know, like the dawn of the live game in a lot of ways kind of made it difficult for people to plan games as like multiple game like series or arcs, because we saw some of them, but like the games that stand out most this generation in terms of popularity are games that people are just still playing the first game released during that generation.
Yeah, that's true.
I also felt like, and this might be true of previous generations, and I just haven't kind of inspected it as clearly, but a lot of my favorite games from this generation were ones that I feel like are totally standalone, and I didn't include on this list because I was like, there's not going to be a sequel and I don't want one. You know, like Outer Wilds is not on this list, even though that is a new IP and is probably one of my favorite games of this generation. But like, it's good, you know, just I'm excited to see what they make next, but I would be surprised if it was Outer Wilds 2, and I don't necessarily want that. Right.
It seems like it's that weird mix of safer bets from bigger publishers and then indie games where it's like, hey, we're going to make we're going to make this bold one-off, something like a Night in the Woods. You would never call Night in the Woods like a budding new franchise. I mean, maybe they'd go back to it. I know that that situation's a little bit complicated. But I think there's so many strong one-offs this generation coming from that indie space, or even the large indie space. You know, it's a weird fusion of combining those two for the look at the generation as a whole.
I also wonder to what extent, because I think about like the games that come from this generation, it's just a lot of studios that people know versus franchises. So like you look at something like Horizon Zero Dawn, and that's like, that has the legacy of Killzone. But I think a lot of people are just more kind of into the idea of like, let these studios who made games that we really like just make whatever they want. And so maybe there's a lot of attention shifting from franchises to developers of like, well, just do the thing that like impress us with something else versus like, you know, make this series that goes on forever and ever, right?
Something, even like, you know, you think of Supergiant, which you mentioned before, or even something like Don't Nod. I feel like there's a fair amount of, I'm just a Don't Nod fan now. Whatever they do in the future, was it Twin Mirror, whatever it is, like, we're on board for, you know. Vampire, sign me up, please.
Or even something like Respawn, right? Like they're a company that formed around this generation and made the Titanfall series, but, you know, like the Apex is in that world ostensibly, but it feels very much like a new franchise in a lot of ways. And so it's just, but it's like, people are happy that Respawn, like people are more excited about the idea of Respawn than they are maybe Apex in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Respawn's one of those developers where, you know, you look at somebody like a Rockstar, where they got one game out this generation, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, just Red Dead Redemption 2. And then you compare that to somebody like Respawn, which was released 4 games, and several of them quite good. I'd argue most of them quite good. You know, I think they might be secret powerhouse of the generation here when you look at actual output from these developers.
Yeah, I mean, like in a way, GTA defined a lot of this generation having, being a re-release in a lot of ways, right? Where people are just like, oh, why don't we just do, like, it's way easier to make you good on these assets that we spent a bunch of money making if we just release kind of smaller new assets, but basically give you another excuse to go back to this giant thing we made.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought GTA 5 was a PS5 game. That was the first trailer
yeah, that's
in their
true.
reveal.
Yeah.
So.
It's the new IP every generation.
Okay, so we have top fives. Here's how it's going to work. We're going to go around. We say our number 5 choice, one at a time, right? If somebody takes your choice early on, have that discussion then. Don't wait and then be like, mine was also number 2, and here is why. You get the idea. Serial Vasquez, what is your 5th favorite new IP from this generation?
I was looking through all of my top 10s, and I realized how many of them are franchises, but it's weird because this one is basically inspired by another franchise, Wargroove.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential there because I think as much as I like Wargroove, it definitely is riffing on Advance Wars 1. In that you can map all of the units in that game to the first Advanced Wars, but they don't have any of the units or the systems that they introduced in the sequels. And I don't think that they would take the same approach to okay, well now you have Neo tanks in the second one, or the equivalent or whatever. But I think that Wargroove was a game that's hey, we're gonna make a game that is like that game you like. And I think from there, they have a really strong base to say, well, because we have these fantasy elements and a lot of the units have spells, we can start going down our own path with the expectation that you already like this version of the game of Advanced Wars, basically. And so now we can start branching out a little bit and kind of introduce new concepts. So I would love to see them take another crack at Wargroove.
So more based on it mechanically than the fiction. Right.
Yeah, because the fiction is I like the story in Wargroove, but it wasn't if they completely recontextualize it and say here's another character, here's another story, or if they move forward in time or something, that wouldn't necessarily bum me out. But it's more about I see the potential here. I want to see them take more of their own spin on the concept versus just recreating the game that they're inspired by.
Yeah, it is funny going through new IP of the generation, a lot in that kind of arena or realm. In the indie scale, I guess you could say. It's so funny that's okay, it's nice to be excited about new IP, and at the same time you look at it and it's oh, a lot of it is going for a clone, right? Going for, we're going to take Advanced Wars and improve it and make it our own. Totally fine, but it is that thing of okay, leaning on another IP, but still new IP. It counts for this generation, damn it.
Right.
Yeah. Kyle, do you have a number 5?
Yeah. I mean, how'd you feel about Wii U in that list? Did you put... I don't have any Wii U games on my list, but
I debated it. Devil's Third was right on the cusp, but I think you include it just to get kind of recent-ish memory, right? Because Splatoon was 2015, and that seems like a shame not to include for this type of discussion.
That was the one that's on my, because I'm sure we all did it similarly, where I put together a big list of all kinds of new IP and then just kind of picked out 5. So I hope we get a chance to kind of go through some of our lists in that regard after all this.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot to unpack, and I want to give scores to all the publishers as well for this generation. I have it all mapped out.
Cool. Yeah, so my number 5 is it's a franchise, is the Ori franchise, I guess would be the shorthand.
The hot franchise.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 entries on this single generation, which is, I feel becoming kind of rare. I guess not really. I guess the big annualized games are still coming out at a nice clip, but yeah, I mean, I really love both Ori games, and I would love to continue to exist within that world. There's more... the way those games are structured is there's a lot of story up front and sort of an emotional finale at the end with a lot of gameplay in the middle.
Yeah.
And I feel that's a good system, and there's a lot more to explore within that world, and yeah, those games are great. I think those are, in terms of if I look at the last maybe even decade of the best Metroid inspired games, I think Ori is my favorite, maybe.
Yeah, Ori's on my honorable mentions as well. I agree, the kind of surprising caveat of there weren't a lot of them, not a lot on my list had just this game too. You know, it was hard to find. So the fact that Ori started this generation, even though it felt like there's a huge gap between them, like Will of the Wisps, I felt like was coming for like 4 years.
Kept getting delayed, yeah.
Yeah, the fact that they're both out and both really great, and it seems like Microsoft is just going to continue to like bankroll that series, right? Like it does well for them.
Yeah, it's that weird realm of it's attached to Microsoft. Obviously, it's released on Switch as well, that first game at this point. But still no PS4. But at the same time, it's a bizarre anomaly to see Microsoft gobbling up so many indie studios, but Moon Studios, no go. Like, I wonder how much they offered to Moon Studios and they just kept turning it down. Like, I remember asking the director of Ori at E3 and he's like, very clearly imply that Microsoft had offered to buy the studio at some point, but it makes me wonder like what that studio has in store, if they want to break free from Ori or if just the developers are so hell-bent on keeping that completely independent.
Yeah, because I think Microsoft probably values it a lot because it is in that perfect Game Pass tier where it's like it exposes more people to it. You know, people who might not buy, like who might look at that game and say, I don't know if I want to buy that specifically, but because it's free and I already basically have it, I can play it. And it's like, oh, it's like those games that I used to play. Like, this is really cool. And it gives them an exclusive basically to, you know, and with Game Pass being the thing that they're pushing more, I would argue, than their own console at this point. But like it is like in that tier where it's like relatively low cost. We don't have to build like a new universe. We don't have to invest like millions of dollars into this studio that is like staffed by like 40 people or whatever. Like, it is relatively low cost for what you're getting out of it, which is like an exclusive that people really like.
Right. Yeah, and it's a weird situation where they were a remote studio before everybody in the world was a remote studio. So they understood working from home better than most. Maybe they had some tips for other developers at Microsoft or beyond that were getting into that game with COVID. Jacob, number 5, what do you got, man?
Sure. So here can be our first discussion about potentially prolific.
Ooh.
My number 5 is Death Stranding.
Ooh, potentially prolific indeed.
Yeah, so I really liked Death Stranding while I was playing it, and the more time goes by, the more I like it. Like, I feel like, especially
because you're not
in the
playing
kind of... Yeah, that's it. You know, I guess the more AAA games I play that are not Death Stranding, the more I appreciate all the things that Death Stranding was doing and kind of how weird and original it was. And I would love to see more, not even necessarily in the world or with, you know, Norman Reedus, but just kind of with those gameplay systems. And Kojima makes really good sequels. Like, he's good at making sequels. And so I feel like the potential of a Death Stranding 2 is real high.
Hang on.
Yeah.
So you don't want more from the world or the characters. You just want more walking? Or
Well, I'm saying I don't need it to look like Iceland again. You know,
Right.
and I don't need Sam Porter Bridges, but I am interested in another Strand game, and I think he could call it Death Stranding 2 and still have, you know, the kind of the overall setting of like semi-post-apocalyptic, you gotta carry stuff from place to place, and have that be enough connective tissue that it could still be a Death Stranding game. But, you know, you don't have all the weird plot baggage that the first one loved to just dive into.
That Death Stranding was definitely on my honorable mentions, and I think that I think maybe my least favorite part of Death Stranding was the parts where it felt like it had to be like other games, like the shooting specifically, and a lot of like the open world. Well, you got to do like we have to give you an experience bar that you're always leveling up. You have to run a bunch of errands in this open world framework. So I think that game is definitely ripe for, okay, if maybe Kojima taking feedback from like, oh, people maybe didn't like the shooting, or, you know, whatever people ended up liking or not, and then him going back and like, well, I can go even crazier and try to have there be less shooting and like less open world and make it even more eccentric, because people like the stuff that was risky, and I can double down on those parts instead of trying to like make it a safer game with stuff that people already know.
Do you think that's their takeaway, though? I bet if you compile all those reviews together, a lot of them are just going to say there's large sections of it that are boring.
Yeah, I think that you can look at that. I think that's one pillar of how people take the feedback, but I'd be curious to see. I don't remember people being like super like happy with the shooting elements. specifically. So maybe that's the thing where it's like people don't love, like it's just not mentioned, so maybe we don't need it. And then for the people who do like the running and climbing and stuff, we can double down on that and make that the defining feature of the franchise. But who knows what their takeaways are, because obviously like the American critical reception, which is the thing that I'm most keyed into, is just a small part of what people thought about that game. But or maybe he just ends up doing something different because maybe he feels like it didn't sell well enough or whatever, Well,
they said that it made its money back, that it sold fine-ish, seems to be the grand conclusion. I would want them to do something different. I think, didn't he say recently that he had a project fall through?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's quite the tease. I would love to know which publisher is like, yeah, Kojima, actually, no, never mind. Like, I want to know that roller coaster ride.
I just feel like from a value proposition standpoint, like you think about all the kind of like conceptual stuff that has to go into a new Kojima IP, like
right.
from him just thinking of it to like all of the concept art and stuff that they're doing, like all of those kind of visions are so specific. And so I feel like starting with the already defined aesthetic of Death Stranding is a huge leg up compared to completely starting fresh again.
Which is one of those reasons that it's so amazing, too, that they were able to crank that out as quickly as they did. I think everyone's always like, Kojima, huge budget. All right, it's going to take him forever. And it's one of those things of like, oh, it's coming out when? Oh, 2019. Okay, like I was shocked.
It's like a 50-hour game? Oh,
right.
Jeez, all right.
Yeah, remember everybody's discussion about that before it released was like, all right, this is secretly going to be like a 9-hour weirdo experience. Got it. Like, that thing, they busted their ass over there to crank it out in 3.5 years, somewhere around there. It's just mind-boggling. Learning a new engine at the same time. My number 5 is a little bit of a funky one, but I went with Cuphead. This is the first time you saw it in that indie highlight reel at E3 from Microsoft. It's like, wait, what the hell is that? Slow the screen down. You need to know what that is. And for that freaky looking game to be released and reach like this, I don't know, cultural proliferation the way it did, it just blows my mind. The idea that
it went mainstream, like totally.
It did,
like,
yeah. The fact
it's
that
ubiquitous. It's getting a Netflix cartoon adaptation in a few months, like.
Right, like I went to Wisconsin Dells last summer, one of the greatest cities in the world, and like in this bizarro T-shirt shop, they have like Cuphead T-shirts, and it's like, what the hell? Of all the brands to break through, Cuphead is so wildly unexpected. It's in merch now, for Christ's sake. It's just an amazing example of an indie game breaking through in a way that you would never expect a retro game upon a retro game to break through at that level. It's mind-boggling.
I guess more games should just have like kids mascots as the main character. Like that. Is that the takeaway? Is that the reason that like Hyper Light Drifter isn't on t-shirts, is because it's too mature looking?
I wonder. I mean,
no.
That's a weird
Lucky's
takeaway,
Tale isn't on t-shirts, Like,
okay.
Well, I mean, assuming that the game is good.
God,
I wish quality. The answer is quality.
I wish Serial slowly stood up and he was just wearing a Lucky's Tale t-shirt.
There are dozens of us.
There was, just a quick aside, walking through Target, they have like the Xbox section, the Switch section, they have like little mascots, Mario's on Switch. They had Lucky from Lucky's Tale on the Xbox.
What?
I'm like, what? Okay.
Really?
No, you don't want Master Chief on there or something? All right, go for it, man.
Wow.
Good for you, Target.
Hey, whatever. All right, number 4, Serial.
My number 4 is For Honor.
Interesting.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Which is a really cool combat game and this weird kind of example of Ubisoft's kind of long-term model for basically all of their games, even their single-player games like Assassin's Creed, working out, because that game was like it had like one of those rough launches, but they figured out a formula to make that game work long term, and they just kept adding content and like new characters, and I think the combat system was fairly novel and not too weird that it like was uninviting, but it had like it felt different from other melee combat games, and it's been going strong since like 2016, and it's still getting new content. So I think for like it feels like one of those games where we're probably going to see either, I mean, it's very likely that we'll get a port, but I would love to see a For Honor 2 that I maybe would be a little bit bummed if they kind of reset everything and just said like, hey, we're reducing the roster size in order to get a bunch of new features in. But I would be kind of into the idea of an excuse to just dive back in, because at this point, if going back is kind of like, okay, well, there are a bunch of characters now. I haven't been keeping up for a while. But in terms of new franchises from major studios that came out this year, this was probably one of the most interesting for me.
Yeah, I guess
Is
we
that
didn't.
I was going to say, is that the only Ubisoft? I mean, there was like, I was trying to think of Ubisoft new IP.
There's a lot.
Watch Dogs.
There is?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can unpack that later. I got the publisher roundup thing.
Yeah, Watch Dogs is one of those ones that I still kind of put in last generation, but
Even though technically.
anyway, we can get around to that. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Serial, what was that DLC? There was that For Honor DLC that they announced recently that everybody's like, wait, what?
Marching Fire, I think it was.
No. It was the Samurai Showdown character is joining For Honor.
No. It's the other way. It's the other way around. The warden from For Honor is joining the cast of Samurai Showdown.
That's so confusing. Okay.
Yeah, it's a weird. That's the thing that I wanted to see, is to see someone like Halmaru or Galford from Samurai Showdown in For Honor, because then you'd have a character who has an attack dog if you chose Galford, who's the right choice, and that would be really weird, because that game is not like, it's not hyper realistic, but it's not like arcadey either. So that'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Weird. Kyle, number 4.
This might be too early for this, frankly.
Oh boy.
But I've got Ghost of Tsushima at number 4 for me.
Hey,
which
man.
is like one of
get
those
it.
things I was like, well, wait, hold on a second. It's new IP, but it's all based on like real life history of a
doesn't
Mongol
matter.
invasion of Tsushima.
That's fair.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I was just like
Medal of Honor is a franchise, despite the fact that it's based on real world events.
History's the
thought I
greatest
had,
IP of all.
I love that. Like I said, I might still kind of be in the honeymoon period for that game, but I have stopped playing. So I'm not playing it right now, if that counts for
Congratulations.
anything. But I really love it. There's room for more. Sucker Punch does sequels. There might be like a standalone expansion or something. They've done that for their last couple games, which I would love to see. I mean, just looking at the whole, list of games that I put together, like that was one that I was like, I really want more of that. I want to see more. I want to hang out with Jin more. Like I would love to see more of that game.
Please don't spoil anything or get anywhere near spoiling anything.
Okay.
But where would you want them to go for a sequel? Would you want them to go to like mainland Japan? Do you think they'd be different enough?
Yeah, totally. That would totally be different enough for sure. I mean, it's a different region. Of course, it would be different. I don't know. But it's a good question, because the game very much. I mean, it takes place on an island, like very much on purpose. Like every element of that game is like the way the story rolls out. It's like it's important that it takes place on an island.
Right.
So we've seen the whole island at this point. Like, yeah, where do you go next from there? But there are certainly places that he can go literally and within the fiction for sure.
Do you think they'd call it Ghosts of New Region, or would it be Ghosts of Tsushima 2 Japan mainland?
It's exactly the Shadow of Mordor conundrum. Like, they're just stumped either way.
Yeah, I mean,
Ghost
I
of
think they would just go Ghost of Tsushima 2, right? Because I mean, that's still like, let's say there was a sequel. I mean,
New
you
York
are
City?
fancy, but like him being from
Secret
Tsushima,
of the Ooze.
because the game is the name of the game is the protagonist. It's basically Max Payne, So like
Right.
him being from Tsushima, the Ghost of Tsushima, is accurate if he leaves and goes somewhere
Gotcha.
else.
That's a
So
very
it's like,
good point.
So it's not really like, it's more his name than it is like the location where the game takes place. So it wouldn't be that weird to call it 2, I don't think.
So it'd be like Ghost of Tsushima : Rising, something
Yeah.
like that.
Or it would just be called Ghost from Tsushima.
Well, they still call him Geralt of Rivia, even when he's not in Rivia.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
I didn't think about it that way. No, it's not too soon for that, Kyle. Based on your love, I think that's very accurate for the entire generation.
Something
I
I was thinking about the other day with the Infamous series, which I kind of forgot had like a PS4 release until I was looking at it.
It's great. Second Son's amazing.
The quality difference between Infamous 1 and Infamous 2 is staggering. Like, Infamous 2 is so much better than Infamous 1, which is still like a pretty good game. And so it would be, it's a different thing because those were both on the same console and they were using like the same technology, but the idea of them like stepping up their game as much as they did from 1 to 2 of Infamous for Ghost of Tsushima, just very exciting concept.
Yeah. God, I still want to play Festival of Blood. Is that the Infamous 2 DLC? For some reason,
let's say it's a
one?
standalone. It's standalone DLC, so it's not DLC. I mean, you can play it without owning Infamous 2. It's one of those deals.
Right, and I guess it's just Sucker Punch kind of getting that ball rolling for Sony overall, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I always kind of saw it as almost like an Undead Nightmare sort of response. They're like, oh, you can do weird non-canon. Let's make Cole a vampire for some reason. That would be fun to go back to as like if I just was like in the mood to play Infamous, which I always am 100% of the time.
Of course.
Of like just play like a short Infamous story. It would be fun to go back to that one and play through that one again.
Yeah. I was thinking about Infamous Second Son as well recently, just thinking about how far, I guess, culture has come in this generation as well, where I think the idea of casting Troy Baker as Delson Rowe, the Native American protagonist of Infamous Second Son, I don't think that would have been done in 2019 or 2020. And there's a lot of those changes throughout the course of this generation where it's just like, it's crazy in retrospect, or even like, oh, and then Troy Baker was also in Far Cry 4. He was the Asian leader, right? Or even like Naughty Dog, a very progressive studio overall. It's like, it wasn't that long ago with Uncharted 4 where it was, what's her name? What's that?
Was it Nadine?
Nadine, yeah. But what is the actress's name?
Was it Laura Bailey?
Yeah, it was Laura Bailey. Yeah, exactly. But it's like those like casting for another race, I feel like at this point with Ghost being a good example, it's like, we're not going to do that so much in the industry. But it's just been a couple years where that change has really kicked in for the game industry in particular.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Jacob Geller, number 4. What do you got, sir?
Okay, my number 4, which was brought up earlier, is Titanfall.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
And this one's interesting because Apex is in the same universe, but I really want to see Titanfall 3. That's what I want, and I want another single player campaign. And given the success of Titanfall 2 versus Apex Legends, that feels unlikely. But
would you settle for an Apex Legends single player campaign that featured all your favorite legends?
No, because Apex Legends doesn't feel as good to play. Like, it's just, I spent hundreds of hours with both Titanfall multiplayers, and those are really some of the only competitive multiplayers I've, like, got into. And Apex is fun, but it doesn't feel as good as Titanfall. Like, it's just, it's a pretty clear distinction for me. So Titanfall was a weird one because it was also on Xbox 360, but it was like a reverse port where it came out first on Xbox One and then afterwards on 360. But it's a next gen series, and Titanfall 1 is great and Titanfall 2 is incredible. So that's my number 4.
I love that. And they had such weird messaging where they said there is a Titanfall project in the works for a while. Vince Impello over there kept saying that, and then it seemed like the messaging from a couple months ago was not so much. So some Titanfall project at some point got axed, which is confusing. Suriel, is it me?
It's you.
Yeah.
It's you.
Oh my gosh, it is me. My number 4 is Outer Worlds. Not Outer Wilds, your favorite game, Jacob Geller. But yeah, Outer Worlds overall. We played it last year for the Deepest Dive, and I think it's just a nice example of a publisher like Private Division, part of 2K, but it's that complicated thing, separate enough, I guess, where they said, hey, Fallout games aren't being made at the clip that we think they should be. Let's take a stab at it and fund this thing. Took a risk. It paid off in a huge way, and now I think it adds that extra influence and kind of room for growth with the idea of Microsoft scooping this up, now owning Obsidian, owning Outer Worlds, so Outer Worlds 2 will be Xbox / I guess PC exclusive at this point. I think it's an interesting case of the generation giving people what they want.
Will it be called the Outest Worlds?
I think it will.
That's what we call the Outest Wilds.
What if they just called it the Outer Worlds 2 Wilds?
They did. Oh God, what did they say? I remember visiting that studio for the cover story trip, and they had a lot of thoughts about like, we're saving that for the future, So clearly they know they have several different paths they could go down for the future game, but they brought up the idea that it's going to be really fun because it's the Outer World, so it's TOW, and they said it'd be really fun to call it TOW and then TWO for the names. They just balance, but who knows if they'll end up doing that. Serial number 3.
My number 3 is Disco Elysium, which is, I think it's another kind of similar thing where I'm more fascinated by the world than the individual characters, who were like all like supremely well written, and like the writing in that game is definitely the standout. But you know, it's based on this novel that the guy, like the writer of the game, wrote ahead before he made the game, and it's based on like his D&D campaigns that he like this D&D world that he started making. I don't know if it's D&D specifically, but it's like a tabletop role-playing thing that he made, and then he wrote a novel based on those campaigns, and then he made a game based on the world of the novel. So there's already like this like really lush fiction behind that game, and I could totally just be down for more of them making just, here is this really interesting kind of way to implement story into an RPG without really implementing combat and making interesting choices. And just, I want to learn more about that world, so I can totally, even though I enjoy Disco Elysium as like a one-off thing that doesn't have to have a sequel. I like that novel, I think, is in Czech. So you can't, but they're working on an English translation, and I will 100% read it when it comes out in English, because I want to learn more about that series. Even though it just came out like last year, I feel like, man, I really want to dive into this really intricately built world that is just like, has so much going on in it.
Yeah, and it's interesting from at least what I played of Disco Elysium, the idea that it's such a small area they're exploring as well. Where it's like, hey, there's a whole world out there to unpack within this IP, if you want to be so brazen as that.
And they definitely have hooks in there, you know, through like with the series, like the history of that world, to explore, like, well, based on what we know in this small section of the world, what is going on in other places. Like, they definitely touch on that without kind of, while also leaving room for them to say like something completely different is going on here that also ties into the like the first game.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't put this on my list, not because I didn't love it, as I did. It's one of my favorite games of this generation, probably. But because I thought of it as, like, it's a one-off. I don't need to know more about the specific characters that you were playing in that game. But apparently it doesn't take much to convince me. And I think the idea of just there being this whole book and this whole fiction to dive into is a really compelling idea. So yeah, it's like, I don't need to, you know, maybe you could kind of have like references to things. I don't need to be playing as the same person as the first game, but
like the drunkard cop is not necessarily the character that you want to explore deeper, because I feel like they kind of explored his character pretty well. Yeah,
they figured him out.
Yeah,
they have announced a TV show. A TV show is in the works, like officially.
So assuming that ends up seeing the light of day, you know, like as every video game project inevitably does.
When's that Shadow of the Colossus movie coming out? It's soon, right?
Second now. It's going to be great, right? I think it's a double feature with the Metal Gear Solid movie.
Yeah, and the Uncharted movie. It'll be just a whole marathon of video game
Tom
movies.
Holland tweeted a picture of a chair, so, you know, that
that's
movie's
fair.
in the can. That movie's done.
That movie got canned? Is that what you're
I think it's still just amazing branding from that Jordan Vogt Roberts guy for being like, every time there's an article about him, some not so good, it's always the director of the Metal Gear Solid movie. Like, he's had that billing for like 4 years now. Show me the movie. Show me the movie, everybody. It's not happening.
You think he puts that on his resume?
What?
I think he just put has hung out with Hideo Kojima.
Right.
I think he's put on it.
Right. Like, I still have no sense about how official that was. Was it just he had meetings with Konami, had meetings with Kojima, and then just started talking about it on podcasts, and so everybody was just like, well, the director's right here.
He's just willing it into it. You gotta dress for the job you want.
That's right.
Not for the one you have.
Tweet for the job you want. I get it. Let's see. Number 3, Kyle. What do you got?
Okay, so this is where my list starts getting arguably bad and not following the rules necessarily.
Cool.
But
wait, do you like this game you're about to say?
Oh, I effing love this game. But the questions about longevity and stuff like that. But number 3, Hyper Light Drifter. I really love the sort of world that was established there. I love the tone, and the thing that makes me somewhat comfortable about having it on my list is Solar Ash does look like a successor, even if I don't know if it's a sequel necessarily, but like if if one day there was a preview that released where I started playing that game and it was just like, oh yeah, by the way, this takes place in the same world as Hyper Light Drifter, I would just nod and be like, okay, yeah, I understand. That makes sense.
Right.
So that could be totally original, but like thematically consistent. But yeah, I love Hyper Light Drifter so much, and just like the color and tone and sound of that world, and it's so mysterious and strange. I would love to see more. And it's like, thinking about this list, especially my top 3, I was kind of thinking about like what are the sort of worlds or stories or just like inventions, these fictional inventions that just affected me the most and stuck with me the most, that were just just important to me, that like felt new and compelling, and Hyper Light Drifter was one of those for me. It's just like, this is a really interesting place that they've invented,
Yeah, for sure. Jacob, number 3.
My number 3 is a little game called Undertale.
There it is.
Oh,
sure.
All
Yeah.
right.
That is my number 2.
Perfect.
All right. So this one is I feel like, from the kind of cultural impact section, like I used to teach summer camps, and specifically Minecraft summer camps, and they exist. The amount that kids talked about Undertale, like kind of 9-10-year-old kids, was just nuts.
Like when they were telling you to stop talking about Undertale?
No, like I was convinced to play Undertale from like a pretty convincing 3rd grader who was like, no, this game is great.
That's cool. I'm happy to hear that.
And I think it is. I think it's, it's got that cultural impact, and Deltarune exists, and we know that more is coming. So it's, it is a series that is being progressed in a way that I think it will, continue to be influential. But, maybe it's not as visible as Cuphead, but in terms of kind of like a generation that's grown up on like watching streamers do stuff, I think even though Undertale was like a big deal for us, the gaming press, I think it's an even bigger deal for like, Gen Z, kind of one click under us, or two, y'all old guys.
Thank you.
Double click.
Yeah. So yeah, Undertale. It's my number 3.
I think before Deltarune, I definitely would have said, oh, okay, I don't need another game in this world. I think it's like a one and done kind of deal, but it does, after playing Deltarune, for one, it's billed as like a chapter 1, so obviously it's clear that he's going to continue making this unless he kind of decides to pivot away from it. But like it does, like thematically, Deltarune does feel like it has things to say, right? It's not like just this is the most successful thing I could be doing, so I'm just going to make more of this. But it feels like thematically there are things about, like it is riffing on some of the things that I mentioned in Undertale, and it feels like it is building on the themes both mechanically and thematically of the first game. So it feels like, it doesn't feel like Toby Fox feels boxed in to continue making more Undertale, and it feels like he does have an interesting direction that he wants to take that series in.
Yeah, and it's also one that, like, I mean, maybe it's blasphemy, I don't know, but I would love to see it outside of a video game. Like, I would love an Undertale animated show, or like a movie or something.
God, as long as it like plays with the format in a fun way as well.
Which, it's interesting. I'm really excited to hear, Jacob, that like that kids really like that game, because one of the things that I love about that game is that all my knowledge of video games leading up to it, I felt like were a factor and acknowledged, and like jokes were made about the fact that I had so much knowledge of video games. So I'm happy to hear that like that stuff lands even for younger players who like probably haven't played as many video games as me, or only play modern games. Like that's cool, and that makes me happy.
My one weird hang up with like other kinds of media is like, I can't imagine any of those characters having voices that's not like do 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 do. Like I don't want to hear like Papyrus be like, here's a bone pun or what. It's like,
what if it was Gilbert Gottfried though?
Yeah, okay, I changed my mind. No, like a comic book Undertale, I feel like would be really cool or something. But like, yeah, I don't want like a what's the Minions animation studio that's making
Illumination?
Yeah, I don't want an Illumination Undertale.
Well, I don't want an Illumination Undertale.
That's exactly what you said. Don't deny it.
But it's one of those things I would like to see it through the lens of other creators in a weird way. I'd like to hear how someone would interpret those voices and stuff like that. But I also hear what you're saying, that it's like it's important to that game, the sort of the sound, of like characters talking is like very crucial to the tone and sort of emotion of that game.
Yeah. My number 3 is tough to separate my love for the game and the impact of the game versus my love for the world and the IP, but PUBG has got to be on this list somewhere, right? In terms of most impactful new IPs of the generation. It's such an ugly, weird name to even call a new IP, to be like, PlayerUnknown's IP. But hey,
both versions of that title are bad.
Hey, look,
PUBG,
it's right. It's
no good.
It's very quickly rose in the ranks. Like, it's only matched by Tom Clancy in terms of people as brains. All right.
That's right. But yeah, just the idea of loving that original map, spending so much time on that original map, and even, when they started rolling out the teases about like, we're going to start adding a little bit of lore about who's actually controlling this world, it turned my head. I am vaguely interested in that. And then obviously Glenn Schofield went and founded that new studio, Striking Distance. It's going to be making the single player or story focused game within the PUBG world. Like, I'm on board for that. It's already starting to be prolific in addition to overturning the industry based on its children, largely, but still. So PUBG is my number 3. Number 2, Cyril, you already said. Number 2, Kyle.
Man, I had to put Inside on there. Like, it's just so impactful for me. Just everything about that game, and like I want to exist in it more. I'm not super confident that Playdead will revisit that world. Maybe their sort of tease sequel exists alongside it, but doesn't really touch on. You know what I mean? Like, there's potential there that like it could exist in that weird, strange world of mind control and stuff like that. But I'm just so intrigued about every element of that game. Like, every new screen you encounter, I'm just fascinated by what's happening. And for that reason, it's just like, to me, in terms of thinking about newly created worlds, like, it's just so compelling that I can't ignore it. Even if I don't know that I would want Inside 2. I just love it so much.
Yeah, it's weird to think that like, we'll probably never go back to the world of Inside, but does it matter because we'll go back to Playdead's world at some point, and that basically is all the same? Like, that's just what you want here, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically.
Yeah. More time inside of those creators' heads and what they can actually spit out as a team.
Yeah, and they could like make music with it. That's a joke about the skull that they used to create the soundtrack.
Yeah, what did they do for that again? Tell me the story. I forget.
Don't know. They found some animal skull and hit it with a hammer to create reverberations or something. Just some spooky, scary stuff that was really effective, turns out.
Those guys are hilarious.
Laugh a minute over at Playdead.
Jacob Geller, number 2.
Number 2, Hollow Knight.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's on my bonus list for sure, yeah.
So this one is easy because we know it's getting a follow-up. Every day I wake up and I just hope that I like open up Twitter and it's like Hollow Knight Silksong out now, because it feels like every time you see it, it looks done. That's what's kind of hard about it. It's like from the first trailer, I was like, this is only 3 months away, and then it's kept going. But this is kind of in the same category as Wargroove, where it's like obviously it's a variation on an existing genre, and Hollow Knight isn't necessarily reinventing the wheel in any significant ways, but it's just so well made and so fun to play. And I've played through the entire game several times, which I don't do often, and I just kind of want more from that. If they're going to be kind of the mantle of Metroidvania, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, love it. My number 2 is Overwatch. It's one of those games I was thinking about. It's like Overwatch feels so perfect for the game industry. It feels like one of those franchises that's been around since 1997 or something. It's like it just seems so rare for a IP in general to come out of the gate that polished with its characters and personality that well defined. And I think Blizzard on that front just completely knocked it out of the park. And again, it's that weird thing of I played so much of that game in 2016 and I loved it. And I've kind of trailed off, so now I feel like a big fat phony for saying I love Overwatch, but I do. I love the world and the vibe of Overwatch still so much, and the fact that they've maintained that while expanding it is incredible.
Yeah, I like the short films more than the actual game, actually. I don't know what that says about it.
Well, I mean, the sequel's going to have a single-player campaign, so maybe Kyle will be more into Overwatch than any of us by this time next year, or when is that game coming out? Have they? I don't think they've set a date, have they?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I always get confused about if they announced a date for Diablo 4 or Overwatch 2, but I don't think they have.
Yeah, I also feel like it was pretty, like, not just popular, but I think influential, because I think in its wake, a lot of people have been like, oh, what if we just made a game that was like a competitive game that just had a lot of characters in it, that where we didn't necessarily focus on like, oh, you can build your own character and customize it or whatever. It's just like, here's a fighting game-esque roster of like characters with really big personalities that really stand out even amongst each other.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of influences for the entire generation, just the rise of hero shooters, or just seeing a game, even a game like, Rocket Arena, which, have you guys played, by the way, the new EA published game that was released last week?
But I saw a trailer. I like the concept of it. Hey, we're going to take a shooter and kind of imbue it with like the Smash Brother mechanic, which is not a thing you see in a lot of other games.
Right, but I guess to the point is just, you see the trailer for that game, it's like, okay, it's another one of those Overwatch style games. Got it. But yeah, Rocket Arena is surprisingly cool. It's $30, which seems bizarre because it does feel like one of those free to play games. Lots of earning skins and stuff like that. But the hook, Kyle, is you're in some sort of rocket arena. You can use your rocket to launch yourself around and like climb up slopes and stuff, which is very cool. And then everybody has a meter. The more they get hit by the rocket, then they fly further. And then it's just Smash Brothers like try to stay in the arena.
Right. But even on like large scale games, things like Valorant and Apex Legends, I feel like either they already had that idea going and they were like, oh, they saw Overwatch and said, okay, this is definitely the way to go. Or they were like, oh, that's kind of what we need is to individualize every character so everyone feels like they have their space within Overwatch to do well.
I mean, of everything we've said today, I feel like I am confident that Overwatch will be around the longest.
Interesting.
Like it would not surprise me at all for like 20 years from now, Overwatch is still like an IP and those characters are still recognizable, which like I like all my games, but like I don't think the Hollow Knight is still going to be kicking 20 years from now, but like it wouldn't surprise me if Overwatch was.
Yeah. I think that's well said.
It's also pretty influential in that I've seen a lot of people post about, competitive Overwatch more than I've seen from a lot of other games. I feel like it kind of got a new kind of group of people into esports, following esports with like the Overwatch League and stuff. And I think other people have taken cues from it, like even within Blizzard itself, like the Call of Duty League feels very much inspired by Overwatch's, let's take from sports the local aspect of, hey, you're representing your city as much as you are like, here's a group of really good players. And, who knows how that's going to turn out, because I feel like, the feeling is that esports is like this huge bubble, and who knows how that's going to turn out in the course of the next few years. But it definitely feels like, oh, this is something that people really want. So let's take this new structure of esports and try to apply it to as much as we can and see what we can do with it. So there's a lot of money like going around because of Overwatch at this point in that sector, which is kind of weird to see.
Bizarre. Hey, Serial, number one, what do you got?
My number one is, you guys heard about this Mario guy?
Oh, yeah.
He jumps real high. No, I'd be remiss not to give it to Destiny in terms of new IP that I've clicked with this generation. I mean, for one, it's like one of the most influential IP, just like on an industry sense, because I think like the idea of a living game, I think Destiny was like, even though Destiny did not fulfill the promise of Destiny when it came out, like I think a lot of people saw that and said like, either this is validates kind of what we were trying to do, or this is the way forward to like here's how to keep a game alive, kind of not have to spend money on redoing all the assets with every entry and just release expansion packs and basically make it like an MMO light in terms of releasing expansion packs and such, and just like giving people a reason to come back over and over again.
I love that idea too, just of when this generation was bubbling up, it's like, well, at some point somebody has to try doing the shooter FPS/MMO hybrid. And it's like, Bungie, you're as talented as anybody, go for it. And then they just get the crap kicked out of them for an entire generation. But like eventually they're like, okay, I think we did it, everybody.
It ebbs and flows, and I'm sure Bungie learned a ton from like how to build. Like they learned a lot of how to build this type of game as they were building it, because like Destiny came out and the complaint was, oh, there's not enough to do. Then by the time Taken King came around, people were like, okay, great, they fixed Destiny. It's like they did it. And then Destiny 2 came out, and it's like, there's nothing to do. Why did you reset this and take away all my guns? And then Forsaken comes out the year after that. It's like, okay, you fixed it. And now finally they're like, okay, guys, no Destiny 3. We learned our lesson finally. We can do this. So like even them as kind of I don't want to necessarily say the pioneer because they're learning a lot from like Diablo and MMOs and stuff, but like the kind of this specific type of game, of living game, even though they're kind of like the people kind of furthest out, you know, the people kind of trailblazing in that sense, they were kind of figuring it out as they went. But you know, in terms of like I think the reason I've come back to Destiny over stuff like even after playing, you know, Anthem, which, you know, obviously not a lot of people playing Anthem at this point, but things like the
that's
Division.
my number one, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, but like even the Division, I think it's just like they did a really good job of keeping you invested in that world. And I know people really like knock the Grimoire stuff as like, oh, what just put that text in the game or make that its own game, or, you know, like turn this into like why am I reading text in a first-person shooter? But I think like that stuff helps so much to keep people around, and they've kind of delivered on some of the promise of what they're doing with the Grimoire and keeping this world feeling alive. In that, you know, here's this character that you really only read about coming back. Like here's Saint 14, who's a character you mostly read about. Here's, you know, Osiris, and like here is this character that you've never seen before, but it feels like they feels like a celebrity like. Appearance at some point when they surface a character from the fiction, and that is the kind of thing that keeps people around of like, oh, I want to keep playing Destiny so I can see what happens in this world, and not just because they released a new update that it's like they have 40 more guns.
Right.
And so like I think that world building I think has become super crucial to why people play Destiny, even if the gunplay is the thing that people are here for.
Yeah, and I think Destiny also just defines a generation so well for being, in my mind, one of like the strongest gaming communities out there that at least I've encountered, and just also kind of a paragon for just having a studio community relationship where the studio is focusing so much on the community, you know, zigging and zagging based on what they would prefer. Sometimes I understand those split a little bit, then come back together, but it's just been like this will they, won't they, love-hate affair between the Destiny game and developers and the community for this entire generation. It's been fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in the press, like in kind of the circles that we run it feels like that game kind of ebbs and flows where people kind of drop in whenever there's a new expansion pack. But there's, in terms of like, here is a group of like content creators dedicated specifically to this game. I think that was like on the early like rise for that kind of stuff where it's like, I make my living like doing nothing but Destiny stuff, and I don't work at Bungie, right? So because as much as we like to say that, you know, Destiny's bad now or whatever, and people are ignoring it, but you know, I'll come back for Destiny 3. Like anytime you see like even the most obscure bits, like here's like this lore guide for this one gun in Destiny, and you're like, oh, that's like a thing that I was interested in, and it's like, what's this at? Oh, it's got 1.5 million views because this community is so incredibly popular. Yeah, like that game has. You know, as much as people say like, oh, people still play Destiny, like that was the thing. Anytime we wrote something about Destiny for like Game Informer, it was like, oh, I can't believe people still play Destiny, but it's like it's still one of the most popular games out there.
And meanwhile, it's like the story that got the most hits that week.
You know? Yeah, exactly. Like I and a lot of those, it's not like it was any breaking news. It's just like, here's a recap of what Bungie wrote on their site, and it's like the most popular thing I write that day.
Right. Kyle, number one.
Okay, so number one, I looking at Inside is my number two, and just like looking at it as like, oh, this is really fascinating and mysterious. I was thinking about games that I've played this generation that I felt like had the most realized world, in the sense of like everything was explained and also was really fascinating and interesting, and it's like was less mysterious, I guess you could say, compared to Inside. And in terms of like a fictional world that was created, nothing felt like more fully realized to me than Iconoclasts.
Kyle, no, really?
Yeah, no! Absolutely. I know it weirdly bums you out that I talk about that game. It's like
it does.
You seem like frustrated that I like it so much, which is weird to me. I don't know why you feel that way.
I don't know. I feel like we've done a lot of these counting down the things. Podcast, and Iconoclasts is always at number one no matter what the category is.
Love it. Like the thing about that game is like it eschews your expectations of like, because you start out and it's like, you know, a colorful platformer, but it's really this sort of criticism of religion in like a larger sort of picture, which is a type of story that appeals to me. And like, they just spend so much time with every character and their backstory. I just like, it really surprises you in a lot of ways. And like, in terms of like I said, a realized world, like a creator really thought in depth about what they wanted this world to be and what story they were trying to tell, even more so than Death Stranding, Iconoclasts clicked with me more, you know?
The idea, I was, in my mind, I was realizing, like, oh crap, we haven't said a biggie yet. And because the reason I screamed no is because I was hoping you're going to say Bloodborne.
Oh,
But then you're like,
no.
when it comes from a creator, well-realized world that captures your imagination, Iconoclasts.
Sure.
But that's very
I'd
fair.
actually put, yeah, I mean, in terms, if Sekiro's actually more close, is like on my honorary mention list before Bloodborne.
Oh,
I-
interesting.
I mean, for me, I think like we were what I was saying earlier is that I'm more into the From Software franchise than I am like any individual
Weird.
games. Like I'm one of the people, like I like obviously Bloodborne is not my favorite, but like even Sekiro, I don't want to see another Sekiro. I want them to do, whatever. I want them to build whatever world they want to keep exploring new ways to approach this concept, because I think they have mastered the idea of like ostensibly Sekiro isn't like completely different from Dark Souls in that they are kind of still the same lineage, but like they're masters of like making that formula feel fresh in a way that you don't see with a lot of other franchises. So rather than like, I want to see them do Bloodborne again, or I want them to see another Dark Souls or Sekiro, I want them to explore new ways to make that feel fresh. And if it's Elden Ring, if it's more of an RPG thing or whatever, like then I want to give them carte blanche to do whatever they want, and I don't necessarily need to see sequels to From Software games.
Yeah.
Also, just on the topic of, I mean, because it's like, I love Bloodborne. Like, that is, what a great game. But the whole game is also kind of built around a trick, or like an unveiling. And so it seems, even though they are very talented, and I'm sure they could come up with like new ways to surprise me, it just feels like what could Bloodborne 2 even be now that we know like the hook? That
Right.
we know that it's not just Victorian horror or whatever it kind of like sold itself as in the beginning. So I'm totally with the Suriel in that I want to see them do new weird stuff.
Yeah. Do you think, like, how many times in her life do you think Cate Blanchett has been, like, people have referenced carte blanche to her? Isn't that weird that carte blanche and Cate Blanchett are kind of close?
Lilith? from
Weird? I
Borderlands?
wouldn't necessarily say it's weird.
It's not weird. Is that close? Do you think anybody has said carte blanche to Cate Blanchett and then had a moment of like, well, look at this?
And she said, no, Kate.
Oh, I see. I go by cart.
What do you do, Suriel, when people mispronounce your name to your face as a joke?
Go, I pretend they're being very clever.
It's very fun. Do you have any new pet peeves about your name, Suriel? The way people
Not new
interact with your
ones.
name?
Not recently. I think because most of my interactions nowadays
Yeah, who are
are
you
text based.
meeting new?
Yeah, I'm not like people don't see the text from my name and misread it as something else.
I guess that's fair. All right, number one. Where are we at? Jacob.
So going from a fully realized world to a game absolutely without a world, my number one is Beat Saber.
Hell yeah.
Which
I like that answer. I think that's
very
good.
on brand for me, but like one best-selling VR game by a mile.
Really?
Like, I'm pretty sure it definitely
Yeah,
was
I
a
think
year
so.
ago.
You can just remove the word selling from that too, I feel like.
Yeah,
Best VR game.
it's absolutely my favorite VR game. It's one of my favorite games. It is just so wildly popular in a way that I kind of, obviously the tech isn't as widespread, but I see people react to Beat Saber the way people reacted to Wii Sports, which is kind of maybe speaks to the difficulty of making a sequel, because they're like, well, I already have the thing. But
Right.
given as it's music based and there are a lot more things they could do, the question is, do they make Beat Saber 2, or do they just keep expanding Beat Saber as it exists now? Because the things they've added, including like the 90 and 360 degree levels, are such a huge change that I would have assumed that would come in a sequel. I didn't think it was possible to add that to the existing framework. And so I'm not sure, other than like an expanded campaign, which, looking at like Rock Band or whatever, those are never my favorite parts of rhythm games. I don't know what they would add, but in terms of something that I think is going to be around and influential for a long time, I think Beat Saber is pretty huge.
God,
yeah, I really love that answer, honestly, because like when I approached this list, I was thinking about fiction and narrative and like, like the thing that when an IP creator sits down where they're like, all right, we gotta set up this world. What is this world? But Beat Saber is like a great answer. Like there's no story, there's no world, but it's undoubtedly an IP, like undeniably. I think that's a really interesting answer.
I mean, they've got like arcade machines. I mean, now no one can go to arcades, but like they're like, when have you ever walked into a mall arcade and it's like weird, there's like a Flappy Bird arcade machine or like a standalone Guitar Hero? Those exist for Beat Saber now, so there are already kind of multiple versions of it.
It's so weird. And Facebook bought the developer Beat Games, so they own Beat Saber outright at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a weird idea. Like, I feel like I haven't really been paying enough attention to Facebook gobbling up these studios, because they also got Zanzaru, who did like Sly 4 and then all those VR games, and then Ready at Dawn. Like, this generation, they've slowly been taking a lot of talent, and hopefully they get to keep pumping stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, when Facebook acquired them, I was actually I was like, oh, this is the end. I kind of backed up all my saves and files, because I assumed the reason that I love playing Beat Saber is all the unlicensed custom apps that people have made, that like Mr. Blue Sky is the best track, and they don't own that song. And so it's just that like there exists a third-party website that people are posting these, and I assumed Facebook would just nuke it. But the fact that they haven't yet, and it's been, a year, means that I guess they feel like it's sustainable and they can keep going even with all the custom community content. And it's great.
Here's hoping. And you famously once played through the soundtrack. That's not even fair. The soundtrack to Shrek, but not the soundtrack. No, the audio.
Yes.
What do you call
the
that?
Audio file.
Audio file.
Shrek.mp3.
Yeah.
Yes. I played through the entire movie, which taught me to not spend 2.5 hours in VR. But Shrek is fine. Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, it's interesting that it's such a platform that people can do their own weird things within the game.
Right.
Like make the entire Shrek movie or whatever. And it's just like, it's just kind of the best time that can be had in VR right now. And I don't think VR's going away. And so like, I don't think I will keep my Beat Saber machine as long as it lasts.
Dreams in VR today at the time of this recording.
Yeah, so. I'm excited to check that out. I don't know about PSVR, but hopefully somebody around Minnesota does, and will let me borrow it at some point, because I want to check out some freaky dream stuff for sure.
I think your friend, the store Target, has one.
Yeah, but then I don't really get along with them recently. My number one is following in the same vein as No Surprise, just like Kyle with Iconoclasts. I don't know, Stardew Valley, in terms of like impactful IP, right? It feels a little bit like that Cuphead scenario about indie game out of nowhere just annihilating the sales charts. It doesn't have quite the cultural impact I feel like a Cuphead does. No one has a Jumino t-shirt that I've seen out there.
No Netflix adaptation for Stardew Valley.
I'm sure there have been discussions, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a fascinating story. And in terms of like IP and where it could go in the future, Eric Baroni at some point, the creator, teased that he wanted to make a game about collecting bugs. And so if that's even set in the same world, that's so exciting. And that seems like one where it's like, okay, it's called Stardew Valley. Pelican Down is kind of the star of the show there. So there's still plenty of room. You could have another game called Stardew Valley. It's just another area within the valley, right? Like, I feel like they can still ring that lemon in the future if they want to in some way.
Stardew Valley bug snacks? Is that what I'm hearing? Collecting bugs?
Oh, you're hearing that right.
He said something that he had like basically along the lines of like, I've got 2 projects that I'm working on. One does take place in the world of Stardew Valley.
Oh, that's right.
So I was looking to see if maybe I could quickly find the exact thing, and I could not. But basically that was it summarized. Like 2 things. One is in Stardew Valley. And then he also followed it up being like, don't get too excited. Please keep your hype levels in check,
Yeah.
But it's going to have a Bakugan at the end. Just don't get too excited.
We're going to get Bakugan. Hey, that's it. Best new IP of the generation, eh?
You want to go through some bonus ones, though, right?
Yeah. Well, let's before we do that,
Okay.
let's go through what do you guys think was like the biggest miss of new IP this generation? It's easy to focus on like some small little games that failed, but what I'm interested in is the big publisher points at the bleachers. It takes a huge swing, and it's like, not so much.
I mean, I think we already said it, right? It's Anthem.
I do think it's Anthem too.
Well, Hanson, you posed this question on Twitter.
Yeah.
And and I was thinking about it, but then you had like a follow-up tweet, and I was like, oh, I think you nailed it.
With Battleborn?
With Battleborn, yeah.
Or
the fact that the thing that you shared was a trailer for a mobile Battleborn game, and like Battleborn showed up in Ready Player One, and it's like you can't even play it right now, right? Like
right. I wonder if you
Anthem
can play
you
Battleborn.
Can at least still play.
Can you play Battleborn Tap, that mobile game? Do you think they also took that offline? Because that one would be
that
cheaper.
one's still going strong.
It's actually near the top of the charts. Battleborn is an interesting case. So Metacritic-wise, Battleborn's at 68. Not that has to be the be-all, end-all. Anthem's sitting at 54 on Metacritic, which is brutal overall. Battleborn, it's a tough thing because like even looking at those two, I've played those two games. I think Anthem is a more enjoyable game than Battleborn and a more interesting game than Battleborn. So it's weird that the reviews are punishing it for its ambition, but I understand it has a lot of problems out of the gate. Battleborn is an easy one to kick, and it's tough because like, those developers busted their ass trying to make that thing. I think just when it gets wrapped up with Randy Pitchford and a little bit of ego, it can be an easy horse to kick even after it's dead after a long while. But at the same time, I remember going to Gearbox for that cover story trip on Battleborn back at Game Informer, and like I was into their pitch of, hey, we really think it's important to make new IP. We wanted to make new IP this generation. We're taking a stab at it. They're like, the easy route would be to make Borderlands 3, but like, hats off to the team for wanting to make something new. Hats off to 2K for funding something new entirely. And so it's so tough when like, I think so much of that goodwill now is just lost because it's easy to say, haha, Battleborn, you came out around the time of Overwatch and now you suck.
I mean, you have the benefit of that context from literally visiting the developer, right. But you could say that about any new IP. Anthem,
you're right.
Like EA had the faith to fund that game, and they could have. Well, I guess they tried to make another Mass Effect, and it didn't go that well. But
I also think the kind of interesting comparison there is like Anthem is a crappy game that is still delivering something that I want and don't have. It's like, right. I really want a functional Anthem. Like the kind of ideal of what that game could be sounds amazing, and the ideal of what Battleborn is Overwatch, right? Like I mean, I don't
know.
Well, it's like this weird. So, like, my hot take on Battleborn is I actually kind of liked it when I.
Yeah, hell yeah, Cyril. There he is.
But I totally acknowledge it, like that. It is not like it. I reviewed it for for GamesBeat, and I acknowledged that it's like, yeah, it's kind of in a space that I don't think it's gonna win. Like I don't think this is gonna do well, regardless of how much I like it. But like, I think for me, when it comes to like Battleborn and Anthem, I think it's a lot easier to forget Battleborn in that it just like Gearbox was able to eat that game's loss, basically. Just, okay, cool, we have Borderlands 3 in the chamber, we'll just fire that off and we're totally fine now. Whereas I think people will talk about Anthem for a long time as like this thing with a scarlet letter on it. I
feel like no one had super high hopes for Battle. Like no one was kind of like riding their like Iron Man fantasy, which Anthem was on Battleborn.
Right. And if you look at like Anthem as like part of the BioWare, company, like people, you can very easily point to Anthem and say this is the reason that Mass Effect wasn't as good as it maybe could have been, or like here's why we don't have another Dragon Age. And like also now suddenly after the failure of both Andromeda and Anthem, BioWare feels like it's in this super dire situation, whereas Gearbox feels like they're fine. Like I think that like culture, like maybe financially, maybe Battleborn was kind of a failure, and as a game, I think more people probably like Anthem. But like in terms of cultural impact, I think the negativity around Anthem, it feels more intense and more like frustrating than kind of Battleborn, which is at the end of the day just the thing that's like, oh, that's a nice curio that Gearbox at some point made a game between Borderlands games that wasn't Borderlands.
Yeah, for sure. And like to go back to, Jacob comparing it to Overwatch, like the pitch was very much, hey, with Borderlands we combined a first-person shooter with Diablo. What if we combined a first-person shooter with a MOBA? And like that was the goal they're going for. Where like each build or each game you're creating your character, choosing different paths, upgrading along the way. So yeah, that was the general idea. And it seems like one of those where I bet on paper publishers are like, well, those are big genres. Why not combine them? But it just hasn't quite clicked.
Yeah, and I think it was weird for them pitching it as like, here's this super deep game with like all these elements and kind of high level strategy. They kind of put the cart before the horse of like, no, this is a game built for esports. You're going to really like it. It's going to be like super high level competitive play. And when it came out, like I know that, obviously people associate Overwatch with like high level competitive play at this point, but when it started, that game didn't have a competitive mode. It was just quick play or nothing. And so it was just like, it felt like the exact opposite of Battleborne in that, oh, this is just a casual thing you just jump into. Here are all these fun characters. How do you play them? I don't know. Like as Roadhog, you just fire the hook and that's it. Like that's really you have a shotgun. It's super simple.
Yeah.
And obviously they introduced a lot of competitive elements at the end, but it just felt like this weird miss in terms of how they were pitching that game even.
Yeah. In terms of other misses, everybody likes to crap on Evolve as well. That was one that I was looking forward to. I still think that game, if you have a group, can be a fun time. But that was another bit of a swing and a miss from 2K overall. Is there anything else jumped to anybody else's mind for misses this generation?
It is weird though that you mentioned Evolve, because I feel like a lot of the games, like it felt like Evolve walked so a bunch of other games could run. Like Dead by Daylight is huge at this point, and it's kind of built on a similar premise of like this asymmetrical multiplayer game where 4 people are one party, and then here's a super powered other entity that is hunting them down. And there's like the Friday the 13th game, which, defying all expectations, seems to have, I want to say the last thing I read about that game was that it was doing okay, but there was also some weird thing that stopped it from, like there was some weird legal thing.
So yeah, it's the ownership, the legal rights for that IP became entangled, and so literally the developers are in a spot where they cannot update the game. Legally, they cannot patch the game anymore. So it's just kind of like, all right, you're on your own, buddy.
But it's still online and playable, right?
Yeah, it's a bizarre state.
There's a lot of one-offs, obviously, that like maybe weren't meant to be IP, but I feel like some that like I wouldn't even call them like failures. I feel like that's too strong a word, but just kind of like looking at this list I have, ARMS, I feel like wasn't the big hit that Nintendo probably wanted it to be.
That's a fair one for sure. That's a miss.
Knack is kind of a meme more than it is like a well-regarded game. Even though I think anyone who's
the first game sold well enough for there to be 2 games.
Yeah, and I think if you ask someone who actually played and beat Knack, they're usually like, oh yeah, that's a solid platformer.
Hang on, we'll get MinnMax's Matt Helgeson on the phone real quick.
Right? Yeah, you gave that game a good review, I think.
Oh yeah, give it an 8. I think one that stood out for me, and it's not like, I think the genre specifically is tough to make it stand out, is like we're hanging everything on this shelf. Is that the expression? I don't know. The point is, The Crew, I think, was one. That was a bit of a miss this generation. Ubisoft getting 2 cracks at that, and it never really panned out. There's always huge gaps in what people wanted from that thing.
There was. It's interesting because also Drive Club, right?
Yep.
Like racing games, you have to be established. Apparently, like the racing games that have done well have already been a thing.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
The best racing new IP of the generation is Rocket League, and to call it racing is wildly inaccurate. But
I mean, I feel like there's Project Cars, but even that feels like it's a marginal success compared to something.
I think it did well. Yeah, I think Project Cars sold really well. Yeah, but that's a good example for sure.
Yeah. I also feel like the Order 1886, I think if that had done better, I think you would have seen another game. And and that was like Radio Dawn's kind of, hey, we're really here to play this generation. We're not just going to do ports or whatever, like and Vita and PSP games. We're like, here's our big new console game. And it just didn't really like it wasn't, I don't think people regard it as like a complete travesty or failure, but I think people just kind of forgot about that game.
There's a passionate fan base out there. Like several times we had interviews with Ready at Dawn back at Game Informer. There's so many people in the comments are like, more Order, please. Like, I would love to meet the world's biggest Order fan, because like they packed a lot of universe into that game. There's enough to chew on that I'm sure there's some deviant art out there.
Yeah.
Did it end with a cliffhanger?
No. No. Okay. It's actually pretty resolved from what I remember. Yeah.
The other one in that vein of like solid, but just kind of unremarkable, just didn't really make a big impact. I feel like maybe Quantum Break could fit in there. Like Remedy, I feel like they are eager to make franchises. You know, they wanted Alan Wake to be a sequel. They made multiple Max Payne games. Control seems like it's on track to, you know, be a game with sequels. But Quantum Break, like, just was kind of one and done, and everyone's just kind of like, yeah, that's fine, you know?
Yeah, I wonder, do you think that is an exact comparison where Sony's Quantum Break is Order 1886 and vice versa? Are those two on the same level culturally at this point?
Maybe, yeah. They're close, certainly.
Yeah.
I'm sure it sold fine, but Sunset Overdrive feels like it just disappeared. You know, that I would be shocked to ever see a Sunset Overdrive follow-up based on everything that they're doing now instead.
Yeah, and it's that confusing thing as well where Sony now owns the Sunset Overdrive IP along with Insomniac. I forget, is that the arrangement?
I mean, it's on PC also. So
Yeah.
it's like you can get it everywhere.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. Where it's like, you know, beloved, but at the same time in terms of, hey, we're getting out of the gate with a huge IP out of the gate from Insomniac and then out of the gate back. Do you think Steep counts from Ubisoft?
I think that did pretty well.
Do you think?
Right? I felt like, well, I don't know how well an extreme sports game that's not Tony Hawk like can do.
Right.
I felt like that game had a lot of fans, but I don't know what their expectations were of it.
I mean, it got a sequel, right? Or was it just a big expansion?
I don't think there's a Steep 2.
I don't
Wasn't there
think
like an
so.
Olympics? Like an Olympics?
There was something.
I remember there being
Yes.
some sort of new content for Steep. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's a...
Yes, hang on.
Mario and Sonic at the Steep games.
That's right.
I'd play an extreme snowboarding game with Sonic.
There was
Hanson, what'd you discover?
the X Games Pass. Road to Olympics DLC. There we
Okay,
go.
so it's DLC.
So there
Yes.
literally was what Jacob described.
Yeah, look at this. Oh, number one. Oh, on Wikipedia, they cite Matthew Cotto, former coworker. And then apparently in January 2020, reports about a sequel to Steep first surfaced when an anonymous source claimed that development was deep into the production phase.
They were deep on Steep.
Hell yes, they're deep on
They
Steep.
were deep into the production
Jacob
phase.
hated that joke so much that he left.
No, Jacob, no, they aren't deep on Steep.
He was the anonymous source.
Should we? Okay, is the number one indisputable IP of the generation? Say it with me on the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
Fortnite.
Fortnite. Sorry, everybody. I mean, is there any debate?
Flossing.
I don't know. I mean, Destiny. I think Destiny could be up there, but I mean, like the ubiquity of Fortnite is just off the charts, man. Like everyone knows Fortnite, and it's like this huge franchise. Like
When did Roblox come out? Is that this generation? Because I saw a thing today that said that half of all American children play Roblox.
I believe it
By
yeah.
law.
Oh my God! Apparently, Roblox came out 2006.
6.
Well,
We need Anna on this show to explain more about
Yeah.
Roblox at some point
I mean,
in the
that
future.
one's tough. I have over my daughter's shoulder sort of gotten into Roblox a little bit, but like it's. I mean, it's closer to like Dreams, you know, like
Right,
if you
right.
consider Dreams an IP, it's more about what people use with these interesting tools, you know, and it's
Right.
simplified in such a way where even kids are like understanding how to build things. Like it is way less intimidating than something like Dreams to like build something, and I think that's what's so I guess charming, I guess, about it is like you can make your own game pretty quickly in Roblox, and the community is so vast that it actually does get picked up, and the way they sort of like the sort of the front page of Roblox is like always different in terms of showing you like new stuff that people have made. But yeah, I mean, like you could. It is something that is licensed and sold in, you know, toy aisles, is Roblox toys and stuff like that. So it does have a definable like style.
Yeah.
You
Could
know?
you imagine if they sold Dreams toys 2 years from now? Like, what would those even look like?
you make your own and then you send it to them and then they send it back. It's like that thing where you can get a model of your own MMO character or something.
Yeah, I think it
mean-
would just be a tub of clay. Enjoy your dream
Legos.
stuff, everybody.
I'm also looking at the Wikipedia article for Roblox, and it goes places.
Oh, really?
There are, yeah, there's like the subsection, community and culture, players, anti-racism efforts, effects of the COVID-19
that's
pandemic. Like
good.
the fact that Roblox has its own COVID section of just like, here's how this affected the game.
Oh boy, it's a living game, all right. So quickly running down some publishers. Here's a rough ranking. Tell me if you all disagree. Which publisher do you think had the weakest amount of new IP this generation? Completely new IP.
EA?
Nintendo?
EA.
Oh,
EA
Nintendo.
Nintendo is down there. So Nintendo, I guess if you count the Wii U, it's like Devil's Third, Splatoon, ARMS, Ever Oasis if we're going 3DS. You hear me out there, Ever Oasis fans? Steel Diver. There's a hodgepodge, but it's pretty far down there, right? EA, also rough generation. Anthem, and then A Way Out, and like
it's
Unravel.
all Fee, right? Like
Yeah,
it's all those
I mean,
little indie projects, right?
Titanfall counts, right? That's theirs, isn't there? Isn't or does
I
Respawn
guess.
own it?
Yeah.
Well,
guess
hang
so,
on. Well,
yeah.
that first game, Microsoft would have gotten that one, I guess. They published it, but
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a Mass Effect situation then, where it's like it's
Yeah.
technically EA's franchise, but that first game is Microsoft's.
well, but even
technically.
that goes other places. Yeah, that's confusing. That's kind of like a weird split. But I guess we could, because I guess EA funded it. Yeah, so I guess it would be EA. You're right.
Yeah,
I
and
guess
then
we
let
gotta give
that
it to
be
'em.
Apex Legends. So I guess congrats EA on eventually having a game people bought.
You know what? You're right. EA deserves to move up a couple notches. Another one that's pretty rough for the generation, Warner Brothers. Known for their
sure.
IP, so why create new stuff? I mean, they co-published Dying Light.
Dying Light is on my honorable mentions.
Really?
I really like that, and I think it sold way better than most people think. And Dying Light 2, I'm pretty psyched for.
Well, it's given them literally all the time in the world to make the sequel, so it must have done pretty well.
It was also weird because Injustice I debated putting on my honorable
Right.
mentions, but it's like a weird thing where it's like it's technically based on but it's this weird future off-brand version. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had to
yeah.
put it on
They've
there,
always got
obviously.
scribble knots, right?
God
to
bless
save
Scribble
them.
Knots.
Speaking of Warner Brothers, weren't they Middle Earth Shadow of Blank?
Yeah, but that's still Lord of the Rings IP.
This is when I asked on the Slack like what we were doing, because I feel like the Shadow of Mordor stuff is like such a new IP in every way except it's Lord of the Rings.
Right. They're still couching it in big way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's definitely worth noting as an asterisk new IP. It feels like a new IP for the generation, even though technically it gets murky if you look too much into it. But that's a weird case too of like a success. They got to make two of them. They're funky, weird, big games. I think they're cool.
Shadow of War was bad. Like that's the other reason that I wasn't on. It's like the first game is amazing, and then it was like we all thought everyone was going to do that concept, and then no one else did, and also their follow-up was not good. So like I don't know what you do with that.
What didn't you like about Shadow of War? It seemed like they were leaning more into the systemic stuff.
It was, yes, but too much. I mean, it was like everything was much bigger, but what that meant was like instead of one kind of like tree of enemies that you would work your way up, you had one for each landmass, of which there were like 3 or 4, and so you never really got to know any of the enemies, and your character was very powerful very quickly, and so often the first time I met like a guy, I would just kill him, and then you wouldn't get the kind of like interesting back and forths, and so it just felt like the smaller version of the game worked better.
That's interesting, yeah. Okay, quick rundown again. Bandai Namco. Tough generation, like Project Cars, Little Nightmares, if you want to go into that Twin Mirror, which will be coming out in theory this year as well.
I mean, so many anime adaptations. Like
Yeah.
That's, right.
Yeah, 2K, Evolve, and Battleborn. But then they have that subset private division that creates stuff like Outer Worlds. So that's another weird, murky one. Square Enix, this generation, an interesting one. Are you guys ready to hear the name of a game that you have not heard in 6 years?
The Quiet Man.
No, but the Quiet Man is on there.
Remember Me. No, wait, that's Capcom.
Yep, nope.
That's a good game though.
Murdered Soul Suspect. Remember that game?
I remember that one.
I watched my wife play and beat that game.
Oh, wow, there we go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
Square
too bad
Enix.
the Murdered franchise never took off.
Shadow of Murdered. So Square Enix also had Life is Strange, I Am Setsuna, Lost Sphere, Oninaki, those weird games. Quiet Man, of course. Left Alive. I guess you could call that a big swing. No one has ever talked about it the week after it was released. Octopath Traveler. Outriders, which is going to be split gens. That's a confusing thing from People Can Fly. And then like Babylon's Fall as well. One I didn't recap is Capcom. What was Capcom's new IP this generation?
When was Dragon's Dogma released?
That was last gen.
Last gen.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't know.
There must be something.
I mean, we're all drawing blanks here. I mean,
That's not a good sign.
Hold on.
bad job, Capcom. With new IP.
While we're searching, I did really like Life is Strange. Like, that's on my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
I think that's a really strong new IP.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even
And
like,
I mean, just also, I like Until Dawn, was one that I had, which is kind of falls in that sort of way, because now Bandai's publishing that,
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we can come back to Capcom later, but Ubisoft this generation had For Honor, Watch Dogs, Steep, The Crew, and then kind of Gods and Monsters, even though it's probably going to be split gen again, so that gets murky. Microsoft this generation, Rise, Son of Rome, Zoo Tycoon, if you want to count it, Sea of Thieves, Bleeding Edge, Grounded will be out this generation, Sunset Overdrive, Crimson Dragon, D4, Project Spark, Quantum Break, Ori, Recore. There's a swing.
Recore.
Yeah. Did I mention Bleeding Edge? Yes, I think I did. So, when you round up Microsoft, it's not as bad as I was expecting. There's a couple.
They really tried, but they just couldn't find anything that stuck.
Yeah. Like, in terms of that entire batch, it is Ori that would be looking good going into next generation in terms of projects that they funded.
Well, and then, yes. Yeah, I'm thinking ahead of like, well, what about Hellblade 2? But that was, they don't really get credit for that one,
The crowdfunding community gets credit. Activision Blizzard, not a lot of swings, but when your three swings are Sekiro, Destiny, and Overwatch, it's tough to argue with.
Although it's not, Destiny isn't looking real strong for them going forward.
Well, I guess that's a good point. Yeah, no connection. Maybe this won't be surprising, but looking at Sony and the amount of new IP that they funded this generation is pretty amazing. So they have Knack, Drive Club, Bloodborne, The Order 1886, Until Dawn, Last Guardian, I guess. No Man's Sky is kind of that murky thing. It was more just helping release and stuff. Neo, Detroit Become Human, Days Gone, Death Stranding, Dreams, and Ghost of Tsushima. That's a hell of a lineup for this generation
also,
overall.
none of us mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh, of course.
Like in our lists.
Oh
but
my God. Yeah, I didn't even include that here.
The PS5 not launch title, but like probably the thing most people are excited about for PS5.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it was on my honorable mention list for sure, and just in turn, I feel like that's a huge swing for a studio to go from Killzone to that. It's huge, and it paid off.
And for sure, I mean, in terms of new IP that was funded this generation, that's going to be flowering and growing next generation. I mean, that's got to be number one.
It's just like, making kind of an iconic character is really hard. And I think like if PlayStation was going to make a PlayStation All-Stars today, Aloy would probably be on the front of that cover.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is like, it's other than Kratos, what do you got there?
Sam Porter Bridges, dude. That guy can carry that whole game.
And Kat from
back.
Gravity Rush. Come on.
Well, she was in the first one.
Oh, that's true.
Don't you forget
She
it.
was last IP, sorry.
Okay. Rapid fire honorable mentions. What haven't we mentioned for new IP from this generation that we should tip a cap to?
We talked a little about Control, Hellblade.
Yeah.
I had
Hellblade's a
Last
weird
Guardian
one.
written down, but I wasn't sure because I feel like that's an Ico universe game.
Well, not explicitly.
I mean, I don't think there will ever be a Last Guardian franchise. Also, Hellblade, I definitely didn't have because I don't want a second one. Like, isn't that...
Well, you're getting one.
I know, but like, it doesn't feel like it should exist.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely one of those I want another Ninja Theory game.
Yeah.
It's almost
really
cheating, but
necessarily
Bloodstained was on my list for a little while.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have that. Why would you think that's cheating?
Because it's like, it may as well be a sequel to Castlevania. And it's like very similar. It's like Advanced Wars Wargroove kind of thing. But
I think that totally belongs.
Yeah.
This one's
Dead
murky.
Cells.
Oh, Dead Cells, of course.
Drawn to Death.
Come on, man.
That flowering franchise that everyone loves and has played devotion.
Yeah. Oh, of course, Serial.
Ape Out.
Does Jackbox Party Pack count as IP?
Yes, but that's not this generation, I don't think. Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's weird because
2014.
What?
Couldn't you see that as like a spin-off of You Don't Know Jack?
I guess so, but it's a spin-off that then consumed You Don't Know Jack, like a child that ate their father, so...
I mean, that's Persona, you know?
I guess
it
so.
happens sometimes.
Yeah, but it literally is contained with it. It's complicated.
Yeah.
But in terms of prolific, there we go.
I also had like Overcooked, Neo, Ring Fit Adventure is like a huge hit now.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
That might get a sequel. Sea of Thieves kind of started slow, but is now really strong.
Right.
Shovel Knight, Snipper Clips.
Well, we mentioned Oh, no, wait. That was Hollow. That's the other night. Sorry.
The other night.
The
Yes,
other
the
big
other
night REP.
Wonderful 101, Zombie U. You can tell that I was looking at Wii U games.
Good job. What about Goat Simulator? Does that count?
Simulator games, like the
Yeah.
simulator diaspora, basically. Diaspora, however you pronounce that word. But like, just farming simulator. It might be like one of the more
Simulator's been
influential
around
IPs. Oh, was it before 2013?
Oh, I remember watching a like farming simulator meme video in like my high school biology class.
Oh, okay.
It was not part of the curriculum.
But then I can't imagine all those are made by the same people. So it's like, does it count if there was a game with simulator in the title released after 2013 that has technically no ties to something like farming simulator that was just really popular?
It's
like Trucking
confusing.
Simulator. Is that by the same? Does that count as being in the same franchise?
No, that's not the same franchise at all. What about City Skylines? I think that one's going to be a good brand moving into the future.
Did we talk about, in terms of longevity, like Jacob's example of games that we'll still probably be talking about in like a decade? Rocket League, I think, might fit in that mold.
Yeah.
Unravel got 2 entries, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super Hot.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that new entry called Super Hot Mind Control Delete, the more I think about it, the more I think that is one of the best titles I've heard in a long time. It is a badass name for a new Super Hot game.
Yeah, I had
The Evil
Axiom
Within.
Verge. Oh, yeah, The Evil Within.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I
Which
didn't
I
include
really-
Bethesda on that one.
I really like The Evil Within 2 specifically, but like that series isn't going anywhere. Evil Within 2 was not a hot ticket.
Yeah. I had Axiom Verge, which is getting a sequel.
That I guess was technically last generation though.
Was it? Didn't it come out in like 2014?
I played it on PS3 for the first time. I'm almost
Was it
certain.
really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I could be wrong about that, but
And then Gone Home was 2013 on PC.
Yeah.
It was like late 2013.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
That's a confusing one, but yeah. We're not the only one with thoughts here. The wonderful MinnMax community has helped us out and made a community hive mind list of what they consider the 10 best new IP, that's a weird way to phrase it, in the video game space this generation. So folks in the Discord compiled a list of what they thought was the best new IP of the generation, boiled it down, people ranked them. So this is the hive mind MinnMax community as official as it gets, baby. Kyle, do you have that list?
I do. It's right in front of me.
Please, take it away.
Spider-Man PS4.
Yeah, wait, hold on a second. Okay, there's some overlap here.
Okay.
Unsurprisingly, we got number 10, Titanfall.
Great.
Yeah.
So they got that one right. Number 9, Overwatch.
Excellent.
8, Disco Elysium.
Wow.
Ooh.
We got a smart
nice.
community. Look at that.
Another one for Serial here. 7, Destiny.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
good
correct.
job.
You did it. Good job, Capcom. 6, Hollow Knight.
Wow.
Wow, I'm surprised at how much this is overlapping with our individual lists.
Well, here's where the split happened.
Oh, okay.
no.
Now it's time to get angry.
5 Roblox. 4 Roblox.
This is actually number 5, maybe the most interesting entry here because it's one that like I feel like we didn't touch at all, but it's Celeste.
What?
Okay.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
I like
interesting.
It is. It's definitely a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how much franchise potential that has, but it's a good
almost
game.
in some
It's a good original game. So
It almost
out.
feels like a spin-off some ways of like Towerfall, like I guess just mechanically. I don't know.
Yeah.
So maybe it would spin off again.
I mean, she's a good character. Like people like, that. Although I can't remember her name.
Isn't her name? I know.
No, because the mountain is Celeste.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's a Celeste's monster.
Oh, that's right.
There we go. Okay, number 4, Cuphead.
Wow. Okay.
Old T-shirt character themselves. Number 3, Hanson, you'll be happy about this. Bloodborne.
Oh, great. Okay, somebody's
that game that you
Bloodborne.
love, right, Hanson?
I don't hate
Beat
it.
so many times.
You just wanted to make sure we talked about it.
Yeah, it
no
feels like the
disrespect
biggie.
to Bloodborne, just, none of our favorites necessarily. Number 2, Control.
What?
Very high.
Wow.
Above Bloodborne.
Above Bloodborne.
MinnMax
Control,
community,
the
you're
MinnMax
crazy
community.
in that Discord, man.
Crazy.
I
I
think
love Control.
recency probably has a lot to do with it, though, right? I think.
Yeah, but
people-
Ghost of Tsushima isn't on here.
Yeah.
That's true,
Well.
but people are still deciding whether or not. Unlike most people haven't played through the game yet, Kyle.
That's true.
Yeah.
I do forget that.
I'm a
And
brain.
then number 1, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Wow, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
You said that like, of course. I think that's really surprising.
Well, it's funny because when we talked about it even just recently, we were kind of like, oh, and of course we didn't talk enough about Horizon Zero Dawn.
Right,
you know?
right.
Well, yeah.
So-
Like I'm not surprised that it makes the list. I'm super surprised it's number 1.
Yeah. But
Sure,
hey,
yeah.
thank you everybody in the MinnMax community for voting. We'll do more community top 10 lists in the future. Thank you for the mods for organizing that. That's very sweet.
Yes,
but
always
we get-
very appreciated.
Hell yeah. Anyways, hey, new IP. Good job, developers.
Yeah.
Let us know what we missed in the comments, your favorite new IP of the generation. If we did not get to it, please let us know.
I mean, it is something when you suggested, I really liked the idea of it being a discussion for the show.
Yeah.
But when I started, the list ended up being longer than I expected it to be.
Right.
Like when I started putting things together, I was like, oh, I guess because you immediately think of like, it's all Call of Duties now and Maddens, but it's like, no, they're putting out a lot of original games. A lot of them are coming from indies, but I think even the big publishers are trying some stuff, which is cool.
Absolutely. Hey, Jacob Geller, do you know how this whole indie thing operates on our end?
Intellectual property?
That's right. The MinnMax show is our intellectual property that we share with the community. But no, Jacob Geller, there's a thing called Patreon, a thing you're very familiar with, yes?
I've been around.
Okay, fantastic. If you want to support us, keep the whole indie trainer rolling here, you can go to patreon.com/MinnMax2ends. We'd appreciate the support. A couple things. This Thursday at 6 p.m. Central on our Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/MinnMax Show, we have a new episode of Refreshed on Diaz's show. This episode is going to be interesting. It's all about how GIFs have brought back lost movies back to the cultural forefront. So stuff like Road to El Dorado, which has a surprisingly strong GIF presence on the internet, much more than in any other discussion about movies. So
what's
please
that
tune
one
in.
where Brad Pitt gets hit by 2 cars?
Meet Joe Black.
Joe Black?
Yeah, because that came back purely through GIFs, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
They actually, if you saw the new Blu-ray release of Meet Joe Black, they just call it Brad Pitt Gets Hit by 2 Cars. That's the new name, like on the Target shelf.
So
yeah.
they changed it from the old name of this one has the Star Wars Episode 1 trailer in front of it?
Yeah, they're just constantly rebooting that name, Meet Joe Black. But please check that out. If you tune in live at 6 p.m. Central on our Twitch channel on Thursday, you can ask questions along the way. Otherwise, we have that archive up in the Patreon exclusive podcast feed, and then also on our YouTube channel. Also, heads up that next week we're bringing back Photo Mode Snap for Ghost of Tsushima. A special bonus episode of Photo Mode Snap. So Kyle and I will be reviewing your screenshots or screen movies, whatever those are called, from that game. Should be a fun roundup of a lot of interesting shots from a very beautiful game overall. Also, we just added a new goal on Patreon for a new show. If we hit 16K on Patreon, we're going to create a monthly show where we unload all of our thoughts on what we've been watching. So TV shows, movies. I want to talk about podcasts in there as well. I know Anna is dying to talk about Succession, so let's hit that goal.
Put me on that show.
Okay, there we go. It should be a fun time. So if we hit that goal together, we'll create that show as well. Also, here's a thing. Jacob Geller, do you ever use like a Nintendo Switch grip?
Oh, no, but it's always sliding out of my hands.
See, exactly. It's like a bar of soap trying to hold that thing. No, so this company called Satisfy, I reached out to a while ago. They make these Switch grips that you slide your Switch into in handheld mode. It makes it so comfortable. I really genuinely cannot go back to playing just bare bones Switch and handheld mode. It just feels too flat and bizarre. So they have this Satisfy Switch grip, and they agreed to give 2 away to members of the MinnMax community. So if you're listening to this, if you enjoy MinnMax content, thank you. If you tweet out your favorite piece of MinnMax content and explain why you like it and like MinnMax overall, perhaps, if you do like us, that'd be cool, and include the hashtag GamesFriendsGettingBetter, I will randomly select from that, and then Satisfy will ship out 2 Switch grips to you wonderful folks out there. So again, tweet out your favorite MinnMax content and include the hashtag GamesFriendsGettingBetter. And then within a couple weeks, I'll round those up, randomly choose a winner, and ship that out. Should be a fun time. We have a bunch of supporters here that are just lovely over on Patreon. We have Bambox. They say, all right, MinnMaxers, orders for GamerBox number 1 closed July 15th, and we hope you didn't miss out as we're able to get one of the rarest voice actors in all of gaming in that box. You'll have to watch some unboxing videos to see who. But we decided to let you guys be the first to hear the new franchises for box number 2. If you've never grabbed a BAM box before, well, we're not called the Ultimate Collector's Experience for nothing. Your membership gets you a box that contains exclusive art, collector's pins, replica props, and of course, a celebrity autograph certified by Beckett. Gamer box number 2 will contain collectible items from Resident Evil, Battletoads, Final Fantasy VII, and more. This box comes with a guaranteed signed Funko Pop. You can grab yours now at thebambox.com. Boxes start at $29.99 or limited to just $2,500 each. By joining, you'll also become a member of our exclusive community full of geeks, gamers, and horror fanatics, where there's always something going on. Because at BAM, we're more than just a box. What's that, Jacob? Because at BAM,
we're more than just a box.
There we go, and they can't wait to meet you. Thank you to BAMBox for your support. Also, thanks to BeatenDownBrian. BeatenDownBrian says, do you crave a deepest dive on Dark Souls 1 in the same way you long to be as grossly incandescent as the sun? Well, tough, because there isn't one. But there is the next best thing. Introducing the Darkest Dive from the MinnMax community, hosted by Bob Buell, Adam Walker, Rob Hudak. They, along with the help of the community at large, seek to break down every aspect of this game during a boss-length 6-hour podcast. Just go to Bob Buell's YouTube channel to find it, or search Dark Souls Darkest Dive to find it. Thank you, BeatenDownBrian, for supporting us and plugging the community's content at the same time. Also, thanks to I Am 8-Bit, one of our biggest supporters. We really appreciate it. They recently announced that they're releasing a 7-inch vinyl with the single It's Bug Snacks that's going to be releasing later this year. So that's a very smart idea.
That's so smart.
Yes, but at the same time, they have an Untitled Goose Game Blowout. They have a lot of stuff. The vinyl soundtrack for Untitled Goose Game, an amazing soundtrack overall. You should check out this box art for this thing. It's made from reclaimed vinyl, quote, grind. It's a random color because, hey, it's recycled, and it's innovative, eco-friendly packaging that's 100% recycled. Every part of the soundtrack is recycled as hell. So if you buy the soundtrack in tandem with the production of this record, a donation will be made to the Carbon Fund overall, which is very nice. Also, you can get Untitled Goose Game on PS4 or Switch, only available at iam8bit.com, an actual physical version of it with awesome packaging, also eco-friendly packaging, so please check that out. It comes with the Spring Summer Plaza catalog, a 24-page mail-order style circular, a fold-out town map hand-drawn by Marigold Bartlett, a No Goose sticker, and it is region-free. So support us, support iam8bit. You can go to iam8bit store and use the promo code MinnMax for 10% off. Now, Kyle, the reason you're here still, the main reason, is we have our prize, the I Am 8-Bit Question of the Week winner. They're going to get something very great this week. If you want to win in the future, you can support us at any tier and leave a question, and we'll read it on the show. But this week, our favorite comment or question is going to win.
What's it going to be?
We have inside pins from I Am 8-Bit,
Ooh.
a limbo pin from I Am 8-Bit.
Limbo pin?
A funky sticker with a secret cheat code on it. And then look at this. The Mega Man 2 NES cartridges that I Am 8-Bit recreated with the original Mega Man 2 box art on this thing. Or I guess a new version of the Mega Man 2 box art. Very, very limited edition I Am 8-Bit packaging on the back for the 30th anniversary of Mega Man overall. So hell of a prize from I Am 8-Bit. And again, you can go to I Am 8-Bit store if you want this as well. But our favorite question this week will win all of this stuff. So it should be a very tough competition. Kyle, this is your package.
Yeah, what's the code thing? What is that?
We'll have to figure it out. It's a little bit of a secret.
Oh.
And you won't have a chance to figure it out because we actually are going to make room for Leo Vader to come in. So would you mind clapping out, sir?
Yeah, let's upgrade my square.
Okay, bye. Here he is, Leo Vader.
Hello.
How's it going, man?
Bye, the dots.
Going great.
Oh, good. Yeah, what has your first week at MinnMax been like? Weirder than you imagined?
No, honestly, chiller than I imagined.
Okay.
It's like been on a couple streams, got more coming up, writing some essay stuff. It's like really just all my favorite parts about being in this business so far. And we had like our first meeting, and I was really pleased with how that went. You know, a lot of like coming away with actionable stuff to do. It's like I'm feeling good about the team.
Oh, nice. And your video essays in general, do you have a time frame in mind?
Next week,
Fantastic.
we should be launching.
Great.
We've got a title.
We have a title, which I was very excited about because Leo had a couple great ideas for a title, and then I have that dumping ground doc, which I sent Leo's way of just half thought out stupid ideas, and I had a whole section for here's a bunch of names of shows where I don't know what the content is. Like, for example, this is a stupid one, but you know, for all these tweets, I always tweet out Central Time for like, oh, we're starting the stream at this time, and I thought like, oh, maybe that's just the name of a show, Central Time. So it's a lot of stuff at that caliber of name of like Central Time,
Just words.
Yeah, and so Leo picked one out of that batch that he actually liked, and it's like, oh yeah, that does feel like a video essay name. That seems like it totally fits.
Yeah.
Real quick, is it too late to change our tagline to more chill than I imagined?
You know what? We can put it in the beginning of the show. It's the new framing for everything. Jacob Geller, do you have any advice for Leo Vader doing video essays here at MinnMax since you're the expert?
Well, I've watched both. I've watched the two Leo Vader YouTube channel video essays,
Yes.
which were both very good. I've always said that music kind of makes it. You know, that having good music will just like make your essay feel more important. It's also in a copyright iffy area, so like who knows if you should actually follow that advice or not.
Just write a bunch of my own music to use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just like make your own version of the health soundtrack of Max Payne 3 and then put that under every essay you do, and then everyone will love it.
I guess
Yeah, on top of being a writer, could you just be a musician as well? That'd be
Sure.
great.
Yeah, why not?
if you just write one sick beat, you could put it under every video if you nail the beat well enough, right?
I mean, I think that was Rat-a-Tat's strategy when they started producing music. All those years ago.
All right, we have a bunch of community questions we should get to here. Thomas writes in, submits a great question on Patreon saying, best new IP of the generation. What about which IP is your favorite that seemed to have disappeared from this generation? Mine, for example, would be Skate, but I guess it's coming back on next gen, so it's a little bit different. But best IPs that are MIA this generation. What stands out for y'all?
It'd be like an IP from that was at least around last gen, but did not continue this gen.
Correct.
I got some for this.
Please.
One, even though it seems like it should have been this generation, Bayonetta. I guess Wii U kind of counts.
Yeah, that's that confusing one, but
I would have thought that Bayonetta 3 would be out long ago. Dead Space has been totally absent.
but there's stuff that's, I don't know. Dead Space feels like, yeah, it's absent, but I don't think it's coming back anytime soon.
Oh, well, is this like they are coming?
I don't
still?
know. Look, Thomas leaves it open-ended, but I don't know. I'm more interested in those that like you know, a GTA. Well, I guess that's not new IP. Or I guess that's not. He just says IP, not new IP. But
Well,
I'm
I
trying to
guess
think.
my third is not likely to come back, but Resistance: Fall of Man.
Would you
There were
like to
three
see
of
it come
them.
back?
Yeah, I liked Resistance 3 a lot. I feel like they could do something with that.
There's technically 4 with the Vita, the Retribution.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, don't forget.
Yeah, I actually just looked it up, and we are farther from there's a bigger gap now between Bayonetta 2 and 3 than there was between Bayonetta 1 and 2, which also felt like when is this getting a sequel? Because
Right.
Bayonetta 1 was 2010, and Bayonetta 2 was 2014.
Wow.
And even if Bayonetta 3 comes out this year, which I don't think it will,
Yeah.
that is a larger gap to think of. Like,
Oh, God.
That's sad.
That's
They should make another one of those.
Damn.
I miss Killzone, you know.
Do you really?
Killzone, but
No.
that was in this
it's
generation.
fine.
That was right at
also.
the start. Yeah,
Oh, that's
got your
true.
fix
Well,
in.
that's been how long ago that was. That was like, what, 7 years? Also, I think this generation went on pretty long, right? I think these last two have gone on longer than any other generations before them, it feels like.
Yeah. Leo, at some point we should do a stream where we all just really get into Killzone Shadowfall's multiplayer.
Okay. What is there's a good emote in there, right?
There is? I don't know anything about it.
I think you can do Gangnam Style or something good like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we should check
I'm
that out.
listening. That sounds great. I'm sorry for this, everybody. Mick Gooch writes in and says, "Hey, Leo Vader and the rest. I finally finished listening to your excellent The Last of Us Part 2 Deepest Dive, and I think it's the best, most thorough discussion about The Last of Us Part 2 on the internet." I don't know where you got that idea. That's great. I wanted to say, in your conversation on the game, you guys and others online that I've seen had arguably minor hangups about the story in the end. No spoilers. We promise there's no spoilers in this discussion anywhere. But I wanted to ask y'all something. Does any other game compare in terms of pure literary ambition to The Last of Us Part 2? Could any other game warrant a 10-plus hour conversation such as yours that seemed to focus mainly on story elements? The only one that compares that comes to my mind would be Red Dead Redemption 2. I feel like the debates and disagreements on the meaning and message of the game are similar to ones you would hear about an Oscar-caliber movie or a Pulitzer Prize-winning book. Can you think of any other games that meet this standard?
Yeah.
Prototype.
Well, you're wait, Leo, what'd you say?
Prototype for safety. I could do it.
You're a deepest dive kind of guy, Jacob. I mean, you've gone all in on Max Payne 3. Would that be your example?
I feel like there is, respectfully, a little confusion between production quality and literary depth, in that The Last of Us Part 2 and Red Dead Redemption 2 are both excellently written games with complex stories that are also really well acted and performed and whatever. But when I think about something like Disco Elysium was brought up earlier, or basically any CRPG, I mean, Planescape Torment, Divinity Original Sin, like, these games have far more story and is, I think, arguably as well written and as interesting. They're just presented in a format that's more reading stuff on a page and less like watching actors.
I think it's interesting that he uses the term literary when I feel like a lot of the language that both The Last of Us and Red Dead use is more cinematic than literary. Because I think in terms of like pure written fiction, I think I could talk forever about Destiny lore, like, and the just pure like amount of content in those games, and both like what a lot of the themes of Destiny are. I think I could go on for a while, but there are, when it comes to like meaningful depth, I think like something like Kentucky Route Zero pulls on a lot of threads that you could go on for a really long time with regards to like history and themes and stuff like that.
I mean, I will talk about Davey Wreden's The Beginner's Guide for 10 hours, and that game is an hour and a half long. So
I do that with you.
Yeah,
let's do that deepest dive.
What can we pull something from Ben's bucket of names?
The Beginner's Dive. There you go.
There we go.
Best possible SEO.
Central Time.
The beginner. Wait, I'm looking for the Beginner's Guide on Central Time. What is this weird time zone between Eastern and Pacific? You telling me there's a whole country between those two things?
Yeah. I can wrap my mind around mountain, but Central is right out.
Hawaiian time.
I understand what Magooch, I'm sorry for saying that again, is going for here, though. Like, that I've listened to a lot of spoiler discussions about The Last of Us Part 2 after finishing it, and again, no spoilers, I promise. And a lot of them get so bogged down in details, and I think I do this on this show all the time. I think we do it on The Deepest Dive even, but it's so easy when there's this, like, feast of things to talk about in front of you to just be like, those grapes were a little bit old, or like, my chicken was cold, but you're not talking about the thing in front of you, which is The Last of Us Part 2, which is just like, Jesus Christ, what a production, what an accomplishment. There's so much amazing writing and work done here overall. But I think in a lot of these spoiler discussions, people just get nitpicky about relatively small things about the story. Somebody even wrote in on the last episode of The Deepest Dive, sir, I don't know if you remember this, where the guy wrote it in, he's like, hey, everybody, just stop just focus on how amazing this writing is for video games and how rare this thing is. We're kind of losing the forest for the trees type of thing. You know?
I mean, like in terms of a game that goes on for 30 hours and has like that amount of production value, like they definitely do a better job than most other video games than like of like stringing that whole story together in a way that you know, like at one point you're like riding a boat through the streets of Seattle, right? Like, and that's kind of like inherently an absurd concept, but they managed to make it feel like a livable space, right?
I do think you're also a little to blame for that, Ben, for asking for the most specific details people can possibly think of.
How dare these podcasts focus on these tiny details for 12
but we have
hours?
so many. But you know, I don't want to point fingers, but I listened to a couple of spoiler casts where he's just kind of like complaining for an hour about like, this doesn't make sense in that world. Where it's like, well, there's so much else to talk about other than these little nitpicks.
Yeah, but I think for me personally, I was, you know, the one who was most down on it in our deepest dive, and I think for me a lot of my issues that I have with the story go like past kind of like detail oriented things, but I do think that like they are working with a lot of themes in that game for sure. Like there's a lot to pick at.
Like boats.
More so. Yeah, exactly. Like riding your boat through the streets of Seattle. That's weird, guys.
That's my favorite literary theme. Tactical Dreamer writes in, he says, "Hello, friends. Isn't it weird that the last 2 PS4 exclusives have insanely fast load times? It seems after a whole generation, developers have finally figured out how to get those loads lightning fast on current hardware. Does it kind of deflate next gen for you, seeing as fast loading is one of the big talking points for the PS5 and Series X? I'm still excited for next gen, but it's weird, right?" So I think Tactical is talking about Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us Part 2, which are shocking how fast they load, even after deaths. I mean, those things are raring to go.
Yeah, it does feel like they're using like a lot of, well, there's like 2 major tricks that even I can see, right? I'm not like a tech expert, but like a long initial load if you ever start the game, and then using the suspend feature, right? So you're kind of you're not launching the game again. You're hopping into the middle of it, and I think like it feels like those 2 games specifically kind of work with those 2 things in mind, in that like people aren't going to be as bothered by an initial load that takes a while if the suspend feature is there to kind of not load the game for you initially.
But I gotta say, sir, like even today, I was playing Ghost for a little while, jumped out because, you know, I'm only human, and played Amplitude for several hours, and then went back to Ghost, and like the load still wasn't that long to get back into it. It's so much better than even like, you know, the GTA games on PS2, which is always the first thing in my mind for those long initial loads.
They're definitely a lot better than something like even Bloodborne, which like had these every time you died, you had this
the worst.
Yeah, I think it was like 45 seconds, and like I remember the patch there that hey, we slightly improved the load times, but even better, instead of just looking at the logo, we just added tooltips. And that was like the thing where it's like, oh, now there's something to look at while I'm waiting to try a boss again. And that was a game where there were a lot of loads because you died all the time.
Right.
To the initial question, though, it just makes me more excited about the future generations, because I don't know what kind of wizardry like Sucker Punch and Naughty Dog are doing, but presumably it's very difficult. And if, you know, now all developers can kind of make loads this snappy, that's great, because I really appreciated it in The Last of Us 2 that I didn't have to wait so long.
That is true. And they'll still have, you know, Insomniac Spider-Man to show off that if they want their direct comparison of, look how slow the loading is here versus the PS5 version. Bada bing, bada boom. Miles Morales. Gotta go. Morin writes in and says, "Hello, Leo," and the rest. If you had to get a video game inspired tattoo, what would it be, and where on your body would it be placed?
Arrow in the freaking knee, first off.
Hell yeah.
We can go from there.
Wait, so you would just tell the tattoo guy? That's what you would tell the tattoo guy? Just
I'll think
start
of the
with an arrow, then you surprise
doing
me. After you're done with the arrow, up to you, man. I'll pay. Here's $100 for whatever else you want to do.
Do none of you have one?
No. Well, Leo, you're tatted up like a maniac, right?
I have a tattoo that says otaku on my back. I don't know if that's somewhat gaming themed.
And that's real, right?
Yeah.
So I have the bridge from Shadow of the Colossus on my ribs in real life. Yeah, can I flash the camera?
I didn't
here?
want to ask. Yes, please.
Okay,
For the audio listeners, he's removing his
There we
literal
go.
Hot Boy shirt. Wow.
Cool.
How well does that bridge line up with your ribs?
Not so well.
Okay,
But-
and also follow-up question, do you think that question has ever been asked on planet Earth before?
One time.
Okay. That's cool, man. That's a really good idea.
I think game tattoos are pretty common. I mean, I know like tons of people who just have a Triforce. Like, I feel like a Triforce tattoo is almost ubiquitous at this point.
I feel like I probably accidentally have a Triforce tattoo somewhere on my body. Yeah.
I think it's not like a video game object, but Killer 7 starts with like this really creepy shot of the full moon. So I would maybe try, and I as a concept, I'm really into the idea of like full moons and stuff, so like Majora's Mask, things like that. So I would maybe just get like, make it as creepy as possible, full moon somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know what a good place for a tattoo is.
Your
my
buttocks,
arm,
of course.
Yeah. Oh, okay, my butt.
Yeah.
Check out my full moon.
Ben Shively writes in and says, in the gaming industry, one of the most painful things to see is a big game get canceled. There have been so many over the years, but which do you think would have been the best out of all of them? Would Star Wars 13 have been the best Star Wars game ever made? Would Silent Hills have brought the franchise back to mainstream relevancy? Which canceled game would be the best?
I was excited for Prey 2.
Yeah. Ooh, that'd be a fun... If they still have an official version of that'd be a fun... We every once in a while do that... A loose series called Let's Take Another Look at That. We've only done like 2 episodes so far, but it'd be fun to go back and look at that footage because it's so cool.
Yeah, that was a cool trailer.
Do you think that it actually would have been good? Do you think Human Head could have pulled it off?
I don't see why not. I liked the first one fine. I thought it was better than the people said. But the pitch of being the like alien bounty hunter and all the gadgets they showed off and everything, that looked really special for the time. But I think since then, a lot of games have caught up with, having cool gadgets like that, I guess.
Right.
Sci-fi.
Yeah, probably would have had a lot of like immersive sim stuff. From the looks of it, felt like you could just go wherever. So that's probably like the most. It also feels like it was canceled pretty far along in development, from what I remember, versus like something where it's like, well, Silent Hill was probably not ever really a game.
Yeah,
like that you could play, right? So it's hard to know theoretically how that would have turned out.
I mean, you say that, but it's a cliche. But Silent Hills is truly my like white whale. Like I very, very much wanted to play that game, and I'm pretty sad that even though I'm sure aspects of it will exist in Kojima's future work or whatever, I wanted to play that game.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
We'll always have PT.
Yeah, you just want more PT, or you just were so intrigued by that shot at the end?
I thought that the like original trailer for Silent Hills, which again was just kind of throwing horror imagery at the wall, but like I thought that was really compelling, and just like the fact is Kojima hasn't made a horror game, and I just like I think he does interesting enough stuff in the genres that he does, and even the horror stuff in Death Stranding was like good enough that I was like, I want to see a full game of this.
Yeah. Daniel White writes in and says, hello, CLCs. First off, Jacob Geller's YouTube channel is the best new IP of the generation. Prove me wrong. Look at that.
I won't.
Secondly, since he no longer works at Game Informer, can Leo tell the story of the Contra Shattered Soldier replay?
Who wrote this in?
Daniel White.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
It'll probably come back to you. I confided in you about it once.
Okay.
It was like 5 months after I started. I guess you can just look up the Contra Shattered Soldier replay and find out how soon it was after I started. But basically, I lost the whole recording of a replay episode we did for Contra Shattered Soldier. It came out really choppy, like the audio was perfect, but the gameplay was totally gone.
Oh, God.
And so I spent a little bit panicking about it. We came out of the recording, and Reiner was like, this is the best episode replay we've ever done.
Do you think it was, too?
At the time, I thought it was a really great episode.
Oh, wow.
And I eventually landed on the plan to invite my friend Manton to the office after hours. Spent the whole rest of my workday taking timecode notes of what we commented on in the game.
Oh, no.
Every, commenting on an enemy's death animation or whatever in Contra Shattered Soldier.
Yeah.
And because the complicated part was we played it in co-op, so I had to get my friend Manton there. And we had to play co-op and do all of these things to this time. And
That's
beat these levels
insane.
and have the same amount of lives at certain point when we reference running out of lives. And we got it pretty close. It took a little bit of slowing down and speeding up clips to get it to line up exactly right. But yeah, if you watch that episode of replay, try and notice that we're talking about different gameplay. See if you can.
I'm
No
looking
one's
through
ever
the
commented on
comments.
it.
So this was August 11th, 2017. Looking through the comments, everyone's just like, funny replay, haha, good job. Somebody named Hell's Fury comments and says, watching this, knowing the story behind it is a whole different experience. This is art. Hashtag Nuck if you buck.
Interesting.
Did the other people in the office like know you were doing this?
No, I told Hanson and Cork a few weeks later, but I kept it a secret. I don't know if Reiner knows.
Oh my
But
god.
when I told Hanson about like why I did it, I told him that story. What Hanson said was, Reiner says that about every episode of Replay.
That's my takeaway. So was that harder or easier than clapping? I don't know. It seems,
Oh my
it seems pretty
God.
basic.
I'm trying to think, like, I feel like I phoned it in now at Game Informer for never going through those lengths to recreate anything. Like, there were the first episode of the Yoshi's Island Super Replay, I recorded without audio, and this is the worst sin, the GTA Vice City replay. It was a great episode, and there was a tech mishap, we lost the audio. So for both, I just took, like, the soundtrack clips and just, like, put them where they should have been with Yoshi's Island. But then there were comments where they're like, why are there no sound effects? But I got the sound music like lined up enough. But then the weird thing was, Vice City was just like, I don't know, here's like a Michael Jackson song for this stretch here. Just like slapping it together. Just immediately got nuked on YouTube. But hey, good times. That's insane, Leo. Good job, man.
Thank you. I don't think I would have done it if it wasn't so soon after I started, and if I hadn't like already lost a couple recordings before that.
Right.
Because it wouldn't have been a big deal. Runner would have been like, all right, let's go record another one Friday morning, and it would have
Yeah, of course. Oh, that's the worst feeling. Bill Kerr says, hey, MinnMax crew, what is a question you always wanted to be asked here, but no one has ever asked?
How are you?
Oh, yeah. Why don't people care? This is something I feel like I mentioned a couple times. Somebody please write in with the colon quiz. I've wanted this so bad, where it's a quiz for video game titles throughout the last 15 years or so, and we have to determine if that name has a colon in it or not. I want to play this colon quiz desperately, because colons have been going away slowly, if you've noticed, over like the last 6 years in video game titles, but then every once in a while they pop back up. It's so specific, and it's probably the nerdiest thing we'll ever do on this show, but I would love to take the colon quiz.
Okay, I've got two quick ones for you then.
Ooh, yeah.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Horizon Zero Dawn does not have a colon.
I think
Correct.
And I know that because there's an old PC game called Horizon. So if they put a colon in there, then it would be copyright infringement or something. So they have to say the name of the game is Horizon Zero Dawn.
Okay, here's the other one. Under Night in Birth EXE latest.
Hang on, this colon quiz sucks.
I was just wondering if Ben could say colon a couple more times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Just at any point, just raise your hand and I'll scream the word colon. I'm going to go with yes, there is a colon in that cereal.
Yes, there is a colon in it.
Yeah.
Bonus
but
points if
where?
you can tell me where.
Yeah. Okay, can you say the name of the thing again?
Under Night in Birth EXE latest.
After birth.
It's after EXE. Bonus points. Can you tell me where the brackets are?
No, I can't.
We got colon and afterbirth in the same question.
Sean Jeezy, do it easy. Says, hello, Double M's. I hope all is well with you and yours. Oh, there we go, Leo. That's pretty close.
Not good enough.
Okay. Quick question. Besides Ghost of Tsushima, what game have you taken the most screenshots in? I did about 120 in The Last of Us Part 2. However, my top game goes to a little game called No Man's Sky with a little over 300. I still go back to it every now and then just to explore in creative mode. That's amazing.
Shadow of the Colossus, the PS4 one, has a really good photo mode.
Yeah. Were you trying to come up with like YouTube thumbnails, or this is just...
One of them happened to be that, but it came out before I was doing YouTube. And it was just like, it's just a pretty game.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just the ease of the Switch. And so it's between Breath of the Wild and then also because I was thinking about doing some coverage on it, and I'm just fascinated by the piss poor writing throughout most of Pokemon games. And so every time there was just something that stood out to me while playing Sword and Shield, I'll take a screenshot of it. So I probably have 100 or so like Sword and Shield screenshots, and a lot of it is just like comparing the art decoration or like interior design of these houses, because throughout that game there's like a whole section of the city where every house is the exact same layout and they just like change one poster in the background. Like that level of thing I'm just fascinated by from Game Freak overall.
In terms of pure screenshots, because I've probably taken more clips of Destiny than anything else, but I think it might actually be Paper Mario.
Oh wow.
The Origami King, just because like so there are so many ways, like because the encounters involve so much like thinking ahead and like, okay, I need to rotate this and then move this thing, so it's like you're thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. So I had like a bunch of like screenshots of like, okay, well this is how the board would look if I did this, and then I would go back into the game, do it, and then basically try different ways of circumventing that game's timer. So I just have tons and tons of screenshots of Paper Mario, not for like preservation or like this is a cool moment reasons. It was like utilitarian. It's almost a feature in that game at this point.
I'm going to start that game very soon, Serial. Will I like it?
I think I don't know if you'll like the combat, but I think one of the best parts about it is that you can like at some point you can basically just skip it. Like there are ways you can make it a lot easier, and there are ways that you can just basically say like, here's the solution to this combat puzzle. So but if you like it, you can just totally do it whenever you want.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Jeremy Bull writes in and says, "Hello, Ben and Computer Loving Cohorts. Hello. Is Michael Jordan the most well-known baseball player of all time?"
You're going from like, I guess you're going from like a person who plays baseball.
So of course Babe Ruth, but it's the tricky thing of technically the most well-known person who has played baseball, but not even professionally. So that's confusing. But
yeah, who's the most famous person? They probably play baseball.
Yeah, it's like, has Donald Trump thrown a baseball? Like, is he the most famous?
Yeah, that's tough. But it's not. I don't think it counts because
doesn't have a candy bar.
What's that?
He doesn't have a candy bar.
There's no candy bar.
Candy bar.
Michael Jordan playing baseball. Because it's like, yeah, undoubtedly one of the most famous people in the world. But I bet even a majority of the world does not know that factoid that he played baseball for a bit. Right? They're not, they don't have a version of the Air Jordan shoes or something where he's like, one out of the
But
park.
I think the question you're asking, I guess like this question is weird, but like the question you're asking is, do you know who Michael Jordan is? You're not asking like, do you know who this baseball player is? And you show them a picture of Michael Jordan and they'd be like, yeah.
No one will ever know what Jeremy Bull is getting to the bottom of here. It's a mystery lost to time.
I like the question.
It's a great question. Maceface writes in and says, "Hello, everyone. Out of the best new IP of the generation, what game do you think will age the best? The game that people will keep playing even 40 years from now. Keep up the great work and positive vibes." Okay. So Overwatch is a series, Jacob mentioned will be around 20 years from now. But what game do you think specifically from this generation will age the best?
It might be Disco Elysium. I mean, based on like,
wow,
because people still play Planescape Torment, and that game is pretty old, and so it's like there aren't really graphics, and the gameplay isn't going to age, particularly because it's just reading text for the most part. So unless that game becomes super problematic in the future, which is possible, it seems like that'll hold up.
Do you think Cuphead is a contender? Timeless gameplay, that visual style, I don't think is going to look less spot on to what it's going for.
I feel like there'll just be more Cupheads.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see Cuphead going the way of like, there are lots of games that have done this and better, maybe.
You think someone's going to replicate that art style better than Cuphead?
No. I'm saying like the gameplay, because I think like when it comes to aging, I think gameplay does factor, because there are lots of games that look pretty but may not hold up where you're like, I would watch that game, but I don't know that I would play it. And so you can totally see like a Cuphead 2 making the first kind of feel irrelevant. Like, this plays way better by every conceivable measure, and so there's not a whole lot of reason to go back to Cuphead, the game specific, like that first game specifically.
But still, 40 years from now, you're picking up a game. I feel like Cuphead will still be tight enough for you to enjoy.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think like aging is also like a relative thing. So if there's like a Cuphead 2, I think like that might age better than Cuphead.
Okay.
So,
Marriott Player says, hello, everybody. No question here. I just want to thank Leo for mentioning Red Steel on the last episode.
You're welcome.
Great.
Red Steel 2. I'll do you one better. Let's mention that. That game is sweet.
Elliot wrote in and says, hey, with Ghost out there is but one question on everyone's mind. What is the best PlayStation exclusive game of the generation? I will keep this short and only including the core exclusive games: Astrobot Rescue Mission, Bloodborne, Infamous Second Son, Ratchet & Clank, Resogun, Shadow of the Colossus, Days Gone, Last Guardian, Last of Us Part 2, Tetris Effect, Uncharted 4, Uncharted Lost Legacy, Until Dawn, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Order 1886, Persona 5 Royal, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, but that's going to be ported eventually, and Horizon Zero Dawn. What is the best PlayStation exclusive?
The Last of Us Remastered.
Interesting answer. I would say God of War.
also, I don't think Tetris Effect is a PS4 exclusive.
That is true.
It's on Epic.
It was on the Epic Game Store, taking it off the list. Get the hell
The
out of here.
Last Guardian.
Wow!
Over Shadow of the Colossus?
The Shadow of the Colossus isn't
Well, the
it's not a
remake.
this generation. Definitely not the remake. Yeah.
Oh, you're not a fan of the remake?
I mean, I think the PS2 version is the canonical version of the game. So, like,
Wait, what's wrong with the PS3 version? That seems like everything that you want.
PS3 version actually isn't. It's got some weird code in it. It plays worse.
What?
But anyway, I don't think a remake counts. I mean, other than Leo's, which is fine.
Okay, hang on.
I was going to say if that doesn't count, I'll say Yakuza 6.
Do you like playing Last Guardian? It's a game I played and finished, and I'm happy I did. But if you said right now you have to play through The Last Guardian again, I'd whimper a little bit.
I've played through The Last Guardian 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
I think here's a hot take. I think all of Ueda's games are like equally good. Like, I think that like Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, Last Guardian, same level, and they're all pretty much 10s for me.
Wow, I've never heard somebody defend Last Guardian to this extent. This is shocking.
I
They're out
really
there.
like it. I have a video about it. But
I have not
yeah,
watched that one. I'm sorry.
I'm a big fan.
The animation undoubtedly is awesome. I think the world is awesome. The art's awesome.
I
But-
think it has the strongest ending of any of his games. And I also, as I talked about in the video, like, this is kind of lame, but as a pet owner, like, Last Guardian does just kind of get me in that way that I suppose the way that, like, people have kids feel about God of War or whatever.
Interesting. Okay, sentimental attachment. But you got to admit, I mean, some of that platforming is frustrating.
It's jank, but so is Shadow of the Colossus. Like, it's... Last Guardian is probably worse.
Yeah.
But that's still my favorite.
Wow. All right. Bold move. Cyril, did you say yours?
With the caveat that I think PC is probably the best PS game you can only play on PS4, and I'm offended that it's not on the list. I guess Man, it's tough. I think it'd be either between Persona 5 and God of War.
What if you had to choose?
If I had to choose.
If you had to choose.
Yakuza 6.
You know what? Between those two, I'm gonna. I guess God of War, but that's because I secretly hope that Persona 5 eventually gets ported to somewhere other than PS4,
I bet it will at some point,
like
right?
PS5.
Yeah, that'd be great. Brandon Sylvia from Easygoing Gaming writes in and says, are there any games you've never played for one reason or another, but you would like to check out in some form or in the form of a remake or reboot? I've noticed with the remake trend that even though it can feel a little bit oversaturated at times, it does allow me to check out new experiences of classic games for the first time. For example, I probably would have never got around to playing Final Fantasy VII if it wasn't for the remake, and now it's probably my game of the year. Look at that. See, Leo, Final Fantasy VII Remake, undoubtedly game of the year. Keep that in mind for MinnMax's Game of the Year awards.
It's very exciting.
Okay, yeah, so a game you wouldn't check out unless it was remade or rebooted.
My gut says the early Final Fantasies, because I am interested in, when I hear people praising their stories or whatever, I'm interested in revisiting them in a way that's not in their original form. But then again, I'm not even playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, so what do I care?
Yeah, you're lost. You're lost out in the woods, man.
Yeah.
What? Did you try the 7 Remake?
No.
You might. I think you'd like the combat.
Yeah, sure. I probably would. I don't know. Nothing I've seen about it seems like it would be for me. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
There are other PS1 games actually similar to Final Fantasy VII, like Parasite Eve is a game that I've always thought like looked interesting, and I liked like the vibe of it, but I'm just not gonna play a PS1 game. Vagrant Story is another one.
Yeah.
That's like those old RPGs that have things that seem really interesting to me, but I just like I didn't have a PS1 even as a kid, and so it's like it's not going back to something nostalgic. It's just like it's not going to play great.
It's so tough. Yeah, like I really want to check out Valkyrie Profile at some point, but like I know without nostalgia that's going to be a cold splash of water in my face at times, but I still want to do it at some point in the future, maybe for a deepest dive. We'll see.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, every once in a while I get the desire to play the original Metal Gear.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would unless they did like a whole like remake of that. And kind of, because it feels like that's where Metal Gear Solid 5 was kind of heading, is like the next game after this is just going to basically it almost directly leads into Metal Gear, right? So
right.
It'd be interesting to revisit that story
Would
and
you,
see.
Yeah.
Would you want the remake to be like 3D?
I think so. Or I would take like a, even if they went like, Metal Gear Solid 3 style, like it's kind of like a lower budget thing, but it's like overhead, but it has like 3D graphics. I would even take that.
Would be the dumbest way to remake that, but I would be completely on board for, and I bet they would still sell 60% as many copies. What if they just took like the Fox engine, right? So it's like that level of fidelity for Snake, and then just took the environments from Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 and just like put you in them, but they're all just like the base textures, just like it looks like a gray box environment, but it's just like literally
Earth.
What's that?
Google Earth close up on like a city.
A little bit, yeah, but just like huge boxes of like, here's this room over here. It kind of just looks like that weird emulator that turns all the NES games into 3D stuff. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be just like some funky, weird ass version of it? I think it'd be really cool, and probably they could do it in like a week.
But why?
Why? Because honestly, wouldn't you buy that? Just some freaky
Well,
ass
I mean, I would
remake
buy it
of-
because it would be Metal Gear, but like,
See?
what is the creative impetus for like that? Just seems like, yeah, we could do whatever we want in this game. And people
It's
would
like
buy
the
this
best
game.
way to split the difference between being faithful to the original Metal Gears, but then bringing some modernization to it.
But then you have this hyper realistic Snake. Is that what?
Who's
Yeah.
voicing Snake?
Oh, I mean, you'd have to get David Hayter. Well, actually, no, you'd have to split it in the middle again. So it'd be like a digitized version of David Hayter's voice.
Maybe he like has it. He's possessed by his spirit of his past, or
Yes.
like Big Boss or something, and he's played by both David Hayter and Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, that's perfect.
Wow.
And then at the end, he wakes up like on the helicopter in Metal Gear Solid 4.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, based on that sequence of Metal Gear Solid 4, you could justify anything. Like, just get freaky, release some weirdo version remake of those games, and call it a day. Otherwise, Konami's not going to do it.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
I'll take it however I can get it, I guess.
All right, perfect. Jamie Victor Negron Serrano says, hello, MinnMax. When I was growing up in rural Puerto Rico in the early to mid 2000s, barely anyone I knew had regular access to the internet or even cable TV. The hype for upcoming games and consoles was almost inexistent, and we found out about newer popular releases mostly through word of mouth. In the past few years, I've realized that mini video games were very popular in my youth, weren't very big in the United States. Of course, we knew GTA, but I remember stuff like Need for Speed Underground 2 and 50 Cent Bulletproof being huge in my school at some point. Also, among my cousins' households, there was way more GameCubes than PS2s, and it surprised me to find out that the GameCube is considered a flop and had fewer units sold than the original Xbox. No one I knew even had an Xbox. Question: were there any popular games in your schools or neighborhoods that you later found out weren't as big as you had thought growing up? It's a good question.
Definitely not to that extent, because really, like, when I think about popular games, it was just like, I would go over to a friend's house to play this game, and so would other friends. It was like there was one friend who had this game on CD-ROM, and we'd all play it. Lego Racers was the big one for
wow.
me.
Hell
Like,
yeah.
instead of Mario Kart, because like all my friends were just like playing things on our parents' computers, basically.
Yeah.
The Lego Racers CD was a big hit.
That I remember that game, not to be confused with Lego Island, which is also.
I also like that
Lego.
game a lot. But yeah, Lego Racers. It had kind of an interesting like power up mechanic where you could pick up like a mushroom equivalent, but then if you held onto it and got more power ups, the mushroom would get stronger and eventually turn into like a rocket or a teleporter.
This is perfect, Jacob. I forgot that I played a lot of this game over at my friend's house too. Looking at this gameplay again, it's like, oh my god,
Wait,
Lego Racers.
Were you two friends as kids?
Jacob, that's you?
It was weird that I was friends with someone, probably 10 years older than me.
Hey, Lego brings the world together, That's the weird thing is like, I think there's examples like Lego Racers that I'm sure they sold gangbusters. It's just nobody talks about them. I'm sure a lot of these games that I thought were popular around the world, it just turns out that, I don't know, once you get into the game industry or grow up, no one talks about them, but they still actually seep through. Like there's stuff, my friend Grant, chef from MinnMax, I remember him and Ronnie were obsessed with this Pirates of the Caribbean game from 2003. And I've never heard a single human being mention this game since then. So it was developed as like this open world RPG. It was published by both Bethesda and Ubisoft. It is just this bizarre thing where it was I guess a separate pirate game, and then after Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean, broke the box office, it was so successful, then they just slapped like Curse of the Black Pearl onto the name of this game overall. And so it's just this weird hybrid open-ended RPG that they claimed was the second coming of Christ, and I've never gone back to look at, but it'd be kind of fun to check out at some point here.
This isn't an answer to the question, but I've been shocked to grow up and learn that people don't like Donkey Kong 64.
Shocked?
Yeah, that was kind of the second coming for me and my friends as a kid. We couldn't imagine a better game.
Second coming of Kong.
That's right.
I mean, the rap is great, but I didn't play it as a kid, but trying to play it as an adult, I can see why that game didn't quite hit the masses the same way.
Some people weren't ready for it.
That's true. That's true. Do you think that game holds up well? Do you think you could go back to it?
For a couple hours, same as any old game.
We had a MotoGP game for the Super Nintendo that I don't think I must have dreamed it, because I guess like no one talks about that game as like, for me it was like, this is like it's Street Fighter 2, it's Mega Man 7, it's Super Mario World, and the MotoGP game. Those are the Super Nintendo games.
Is it called GP1?
Something like that. I don't like. I've looked this up a couple of times, and there are multiple games that really look like it, but I wasn't sure exactly which one it is. But there is like a motorcycle racing game on the Super Nintendo that I remember playing for a really long time. And since my childhood, I have not heard it mentioned.
Oh, weird. Mark Miller writes in and says, "Do you have any lifelong goals you still want to achieve? For example, mine is to create a music album, not to be sold or anything, but just to say I did it and created something lasting." That's a good one, Mark.
My goal is to listen to his album.
Yeah, endlessly, and to make sure that he's a millionaire based on that
Got a
album.
lot riding on this.
Yeah, we want to be your
that
agents,
album.
Mark.
I kind of want to live somewhere cool. I think it'd be a shame if I got old and died having just lived like in the middle of a city for my whole life, in the middle of a Midwestern American city.
Okay, so meaning like still in Minnesota, you just would want to get out?
Somewhere cooler in Minnesota, somewhere more in nature, or somewhere abroad. Just somewhere, try it.
You want to live somewhere outside of Minnesota for a while, at least.
Yeah.
Huh.
I would regret not giving that a go for sure.
Where would you pick?
I really liked Finland when I got to visit there.
Interesting. It is very nice. Yeah, people are nice. It kind of feels like an underdog.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. Going to Finland.
Catch me there. Say hi.
Well, you can start FinMax over there with 2 N's. It'll be perfect.
Why does it have 2 N's again?
I don't remember. Yeah, this is tricky. I remember in high school having this epiphany about like, you guys, at some point, I know it's cliche, but it was just like this weird realization of like, we're capable of like going to England and effing with those Buckingham Palace guards. This could be something that we do in our lives. And My friends are like, what are you talking? This is the dumbest thing ever. I'm like, it's just cool. Like, it's cool that at some point we could do that. Like, that could be a goal. And then at some point when I went to England, I was with Jeff Cork and Ben Reeves, and we not F with them, but we got to like go up and actually talk to the Buckingham Palace guards and took like a video with them and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is like a little bit of a little accomplishment here. I've always wanted to interact with these weirdos that you constantly see growing up as a kid. Is like, oh, the best thing you can do is F with these guards. And we kind of got to do it a little bit. It was lovely.
Did you feel that was the message you got from media? The best thing you can do is mess with these guards?
Number one, absolutely. It's like the two best things you can do in life are mess with the Buckingham Palace guards and die in quicksand. Like that is just number one and number two for like the thrills of life.
That is my life goal. The second one.
To end it in quicksand.
Yeah. So really, I get to live my whole life like just like hoping, crossing my fingers that like when it comes to an end, it's because of quicksand.
It's very smart. Jake Zielsdorf writes in and says, hey guys, do you believe in the highbrow, lowbrow distinction in art? And do you think it applies to games? Do you consider games like Last of Us Part 2 and Red Dead Redemption 2 highbrow, and games like Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild lowbrow? Why or why not?
It's a weird distinction.
Yeah.
Like I would say, first off, no, I don't really believe in that, at least on anything more than like a personal basis. But also, it seems like that distinction is just like, are they violent or not?
Yeah. Well, do you think the highbrow, lowbrow thing in general exists? Forget his examples specifically.
I think that as an individual, you can totally have things where you're like, I want to play this because it will make me think critically and make me smarter and whatever, and I want to play this because I want to turn my brain off and put those kind of things in two different camps. But I don't think there's any objectivity in assessing art, and so what could be my lowbrow, someone else could get a huge amount out of. And I think kind of the idea of putting some things in like a lowbrow camp just for everyone is kind of a bummer, because it means that like EDF doesn't get thought about critically or something.
But don't you think that the gaming Illuminati do kind of consider Call of Duty to be a lowbrow?
I mean, is lowbrow just like mass market?
I think so. Isn't that the way lowbrow works?
Yeah, I think that like with games, it's such a weird thing, because like I think games are like the one medium where like if games were movies, I think like everyone would feel like the Marvel movies are like the peak of art in a lot of ways, because I think a lot of the most popular games are also the most critically praised. So like there's this weird kind of dissonance between that kind of stuff. But I think that a lot of the highbrow, lowbrow stuff is weird with games, because a lot of it is also almost always thematic. So like you look at something like Red Dead and The Last of Us, it's like there's a lot of thematic themes and they're very solemn. But I think that games are always speaking like two separate languages, right? So you think about something like Dota, and it's like the subject matter, it could not be more trivial. But in terms of the language that it's speaking, it is so incredibly dense, and it is so much more sophisticated that I am turning my brain on when I play Dota. But it is to a very different end than something like in The Last of Us. So I think like that distinction feels particularly weird with video games, because we engage with them for so many different reasons.
Yeah. Leo's squinting a lot, so I assume he's thinking hard. He'll keep thinking.
And I'll have a really good contribution any minute now.
Ashton Davis says, hey everyone, first things first, welcome Leo.
Thank you.
All right, so a few years ago, I was listening to some old Mega 64 podcasts from the distant year of 2014, and they were hosting a community contest for a pre-roll YouTube ad. They were announcing the first place winner when all of a sudden I hear, Leo Vader, you are the winner. I had to do a double take and go back to make sure I heard that correctly and my ears weren't playing tricks on me. It really was the same Leo that had just joined Game Informer and was already one of my favorites. I thought it was so peculiar that I happened to stumble upon that since Leo was still relatively new at Game Informer. I already knew Leo was a fan of them because of his charm shirt that he loves. I have one too, baby boy. They weren't wrong either. It was really one of the best submissions. So my question is, have you all ever won a contest?
Wow, I won one for the there was a Mega 64 pre-roll contest.
What?
Actually.
Wait, can you talk more about this? Like, I want to know the details.
Yeah, they just had a competition for making a pre-roll ad, and it was like right when I started my first real gaming YouTube channel. and I just submitted something because I love Mega 64. And I remember the stream where they were playing them all back to back, and I remember the moment where they were like, so next up is going to be the winner, and then they accidentally like showed the first frame of it too early, and just realizing it was me was like one of the greatest moments of my life. It was amazing. And then I ended up calling into the podcast because they're like, Leo, if you're watching, call into the podcast. We'll do a call in or whatever. And yeah, called, we talked. I got the chance to plug my new YouTube channel at the time, and that got like a big portion of all the subscribers we ever had were from that plug. And some of my current closest friends I met from them finding that channel through that plug. And like, yeah, I don't know. It was the start of a lot of good things for me. It was that pre-roll ad.
That's amazing. Do you have a timestamp? Can we put a link in the description?
Oh, I don't know. You can search Mega 64 Leo Vader and you'll get like the call-ins and stuff.
Not
and
interested.
Buried on my personal channel is that
that
ad.
Okay, check it out. Brian with the Y says, hello, cohorts.
Oh, no, I was going to say real quick
please.
one time I won a copy of Banjo-Kazooie from Toonami.
Whoa.
Wow.
Wait, Tom sent it out to you?
That's right. Tom handed it to me personally.
Oh my God.
But it was just like a write-in thing. I think you had to mail them a thing or whatever. And then it was months after and I was always looking so that they would always announce like the winners on the TV screen. And I would never see like, here are these week's winners of a copy of like an N64 and Banjo-Kazooie. And that's the thing that I wanted. But they also had like the follow-up prize or whatever, the runner-up prize was like just a copy of Banjo-Kazooie. And I was thinking, okay, I don't have enough money to get an N64. This is going to be how I get an N64. So like months later, I just ended up getting a copy of Banjo-Kazooie shipped to me from Cartoon Network. But I didn't have an N64 because I was counting on that to get it.
No.
So for a while, I had a copy of Banjo-Kazooie, but no N64 to play it on.
Oh my God. That's existential torture. Mm-hmm. Brian with the Y says, hello, everybody. What video game enemy has induced the most anxiety for you? For me, it was always the Crimson Heads from Resident Evil Remake. As soon as you see one running at you full speed, you know you need to either fight it or get the heck out of there. However, the mere sight of them always caused me to panic. Most anxiety-inducing enemy.
I got a couple. The Wallmaster from Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
Because it was the idea that you would get taken out of the dungeon, and especially for young me who had like basically no spatial awareness, I'm like, if I get taken out of this room, I'm literally never gonna find it again.
Right.
And so I was just terrified of them. And then more recently, the chrysalids in XCOM. Which are the kind of purple spidery things, because they can move really far and attack on the same turn, and they do poison damage. And by like, usually when you meet them in the campaign, you don't have strong enough weapons to like kill them quickly. Yeah. And so it's just like anything with permadeath and these really dangerous enemies would just, send me into a tizzy.
There's a sub boss in Slay the Spire that gets stronger the more you block, essentially. And he's not really that hard. Like, he doesn't kill me that often, but getting into that situation where it's like constantly balancing, do I block or do I just eat this so he can't hurt me even more later? Pure anxiety for sure.
Yeah, there were I don't remember what their name was, but in the first Dead Space, there are these like reanimated corpses that I think are supposed to be based on soldiers or something. And they're like the regular enemies in that game, but they move super quickly. Like they just run, like everything else is kind of crawling at you, but these are the ones that like run basically at full speed at you. Oh God. And like the first time I saw that, I was like, like that, like it was one of the scariest things to see something move out. It was like sort of like what's it called? Samara, when she comes out of the stream, it's like to see something move that quickly feels like a very horror gamey kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so during that whole section, I was like, just as long as I don't see one of those guys again, I think I should be able to make it through this. But nothing should be able to move that fast.
Right. Yeah, I guess not playing too many horror games, but I guess, half these weren't horror games necessarily, but it's probably the Lickers from Resident Evil 2. Like, I'm trying to think of like recent examples where it was just like that, oh my God, get into this door right now. Just try and dodge these things. It's genuinely terrifying. Maxwell Eugene Johnner says, it came up in community questions last week that some of you mostly play a little bit of games to stay current. I'm curious, how do you decide when it's time to move on from a game?
I don't typically have to decide. You know, it's kind of if I stop having fun with it, I'll stop playing it. The exception being, I'm taking this season off of Rainbow Six Siege. That was like, it's part of just trying to recognize, like, this isn't doing the same things for me that it used to. You know, it happened with Animal Crossing as well. Like, I played it every day for a long time, and then it was like, suddenly I'm playing this out of obligation, and I don't find it very satisfying, and I should probably take a break at that point.
Are you looking forward to getting back to Rainbow Six? Do you feel like you're like building up the tension for when you can jump back and really enjoy it?
That's ideal, yeah. I want to wait until I'm really excited about it and then jump back in.
Yeah.
I feel like my kind of boring answer is just like, it's when something else pops up that I want to play more. Like, I'll probably just keep playing Hades until, like, there's a new exciting thing, and then I'll put Hades down and forget about it for another 6 months.
Yeah, that seems like a fine answer. Yeah, until you're just dying to play something else instead. I was playing more Ghost today, and I'm still on the fence about, like, am I going to stick this thing out? I don't know. Like, I'm not a big open world guy. I could really go either way, but, like, I want to see everything they're doing here, or a majority of what they're doing here, but I don't know. For the long journey.
Yeah, I'm sort of on that kind of same trajectory, because it feels like I've seen... It doesn't help that I'm basically like not really prioritizing like story quests or anything. I'm basically just like running around the map and filling in all the question marks.
Yeah.
But it does feel like, as much as I've played it, I feel like, okay, I think I know what this game is going to be for the next several hours. It's just this.
Yeah.
And you know, like I've seen kind of clips from like later in the game that feel like, okay, that maybe they do throw some stronger enemies at you, but I haven't seen anything that's like, okay, here's like this radically different thing that you're going to see if you choose to, like, it just feels like you're going to reach that second island, and it's just going to be like more camps, more shrines, more of these things. Just, you have to do more of them to get one upgrade point. So I feel like I've seen most of what the game has to offer pretty early.
Yeah, you'll get new abilities and stuff like that. But I think it's also just that idea of, I love the world, but like no aspect of that story is enticing. I sound like, oh, I can't wait to see this next hurdle. And maybe I need to sink in a little bit more to really get a grasp on these characters. But without that pulling me through, it's kind of tough to get motivated to play more open worldiness. But Pseudonymous Joe writes in and says, I'm really enjoying my time with Ghost of Tsushima. Okay, I'm sorry. And I realized a huge part of that is simply because of the navigate by wind mechanic. I never want to use a minimap in an open world again. It doesn't have to be wind, but I really hope that creative, immersive navigational cues catch on, because I don't want to go back. What's an example of a game mechanic that was so immediately satisfying to you that it spoiled you and instantly set a new expectation for what you wanted from games?
Changing the minimap on the fly in Red Dead 2 without going into a menu.
Oh, what? Wait, changing on the fly? I don't remember. What is that? What do you mean?
You like hold down on the D-pad, and then you can press a different face button to do either big minimap, small minimap, compass, which is just your direction and kind of pointing you towards the waypoint, or nothing at all.
How often are you changing that?
When I am no longer pursuing an objective and I'm just like out hunting, I'll just turn it off.
Sure.
But I mostly just have it on compass and then pop out minimap if I get in like a player encounter in online, because I don't want to be that disadvantaged. Right.
Gotcha. That's a good example. That's specific.
Still on the navigation front, and our third mention of Dead Space, the Dead Space line to the objective, where you could just you could click in the stick and it would show the line to your objective. And the reason that I love it is not just like no getting lost, but also because I find it so frustrating that you still have to do that thing in games where it's like, oh, I'm going down this pathway, but this seems like the way I'm supposed to go, so I'm going to go the other way, and then the other way is the way you're supposed to go. It's like The Last of Us 2 has that constantly.
Oh, yeah.
And so being able to just know, like, this is the way I'm supposed to go, so I'm going to go that way and get some more resources is great.
Mm-hmm. It is nice. There's that weird thing, though, where it's so handy that I will then just start spamming it. Even like, in something like BioShock Infinite, where you could have the marker on the screen. I'm very bad and stupid at games, and so I just get too addicted to that. It's too easy. But I'd rather have it and fight the temptation, I guess, than just get lost in a hallway over and over again.
Yeah, and I guess there's something about the Dead Space implementation, because it seemed so real world, and it also took like a second for your character to do the animation, that like it didn't feel as artificial as like a BioShock arrow. You know, it
Right.
felt like you were making a choice.
What's a lore-friendly way for them to do it in The Last of Us? Send out like a pigeon that'll pursue the objective?
Every
Ellie opens her
time Ellie
backpack.
just says like, looks like there's gonna be some dudes this way, and then you know to like go the other way.
This is where I'm supposed to go.
I should explore. Right. I think I remember seeing that Dishonored 2 had like the quick save, quick load thing in the pause menu, and you could just pause the game. I think it was like hold R2 and you would just quick save.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, okay, they've done it. They figured it out. This is going to be in every game from now on till the end of time. And no, it was not. Because no one played Dishonored 2, and that's a travesty.
Donnie says, hey friends, do you have any book series you'd like to see translated into a game? I've been rereading through the A Song of Ice and Fire series, and it's such a colorful and rich world that would work really well in a Witcher-style RPG with original stories. I know Game of Thrones TV-inspired games have been made. This is about fantasizing good games, though. Yeah, there's an Atlas RPG. It's not based on the show. It's based on the books. Check it out. Okay, book series you want to see translated into a game.
Bible.
We can pretend that it was not written by any person, but I'm a big fan of Ender's Game and the Ender's Game series, and I know there's a game kind of like it on VR that's like the multiplayer component of Lone Echo. I think is actually similar, but like the thing in Ender's Game was that they would have these 0G battles where you would you'd get to shoot at other people, but and you would kind of like paralyze them, but also you were trying to get a person through the other side of the arena. And so it was like, how can you kind of defend this person while they shoot across in zero gravity?
Right.
And it was just like the rules were specific and written out enough that I feel like it's kind of just right there. And maybe it'd require too much coordination for kind of like multiplayer games that are just a bunch of people running around doing their own thing. But it was like a really specific game that always seemed really fun.
I'm completely out of my depth. Isn't there some Destiny mode like that? Is it Gambit?
I mean, like Gambit is like you're kind of you're killing enemies and collecting these things and putting them in a bank. And then to summon this giant monster.
Well, never mind. There's nothing like it. Good choice, Jacob. Killing it. Good job out there.
I think for me, this is maybe it feels maybe like reverse engineering, because I feel like, as I think about it, it does feel like a lot of games have taken from this, but there's a book called The Dictionary of the Khazars that is basically like, it's literally a dictionary, but it's more like, it feels like a codex from a video game, where it's like the way it tells its story is that there are these three separate dictionaries that all define the same the same terms, but through the lens of three different cultures. So they'll be like, so it's like almost like an encyclopedia sort of, where it's like, here's how like the Battle of Blank or whatever. And in like I think it's all based on religion. So it's like in the Jewish dictionary, they give you one viewpoint of like, here's how we've decided to write about this encounter as like, it was like a great victory for us, versus like the Christian version of that thing will say, it was like a defeat and it was like disaster, right? So they use these different entries to give you different perspectives on the same thing.
Wait, and this is based on reality?
No, it's it's maybe based on a real like kind of history, but it's like a totally fictional book. It's not like this happened and then this happened. It's just like a series of terms that they just kind of define at length. And so I think it'd be interesting to kind of maybe mimic that structure where it's just like a series of vignettes where you're seeing the same event from different perspectives. But it'd be really weird to figure out how to do that as a game, because it's literally just like, here's how this word is defined, here's how this word is defined.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see someone tackle something like that.
Right. I was going to say the Encyclopedia Britannica, personally, so I don't know how they're going to do that either.
That's just, have you heard of the game Everything? I think that's true.
Yeah.
Scribblenauts.
That's it. Perfect. Flaming Queso says, hey, howdy, hey, Hanson, cohorts, and Mr. Geller. Hello. Let's take a positive angle for just one quick second here. What is something you're really going to miss about life in the current pandemic? For me, it's the complete freedom of working from home and the ability to take breaks from work to enjoy my hobbies in the middle of the workday. That's a very good one. Something you're going to miss about this state for you personally.
Yeah, I was surprised how much I liked working from home. And were I still a Game Informer, I was like, dang, it'll be too bad almost. Like, I missed that office, but I love working from home. But now, solved it. So maybe take a lesson from that. But I guess with that not being the answer, how much I get to see my girlfriend, because she's going to go back to work. And then it'll be just me all alone.
Look at that. What a softy, sweetie guy. What do you like about working from home?
I find it easier to motivate myself than I thought it would. And it's nice to be like, okay, I know kind of when I'm being productive today and when I'm not, and I can kind of lean into it in either case.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
Makes sense.
Yep. No, I've had the exact same roller coaster ride myself where I was really worried about it. And it's like, oh no, it turns out it's fine. If you're excited about the work, you're excited about the work, and you'll work your ass off.
Not to compare this to your human girlfriends, but getting to spend so much time with my dog is really nice.
Yeah, I'm sure your dog's wonderful. Suriel, tell him his dog's wonderful.
You have a great dog.
Thank you.
Congrats on the dog, Jacob.
Hot dog.
Great.
Okay. Dennis M. writes in and says, hello, Ben and crew. Let's play a little game called The Price is Right Video Game Items Edition. Several people have written in with this. I don't think it's the same person every time. And if several people are coming to this idea, they're all geniuses because I always love playing this. Below is a list of 8 video game items, the games in which they appear, and the currency required to purchase them in the game. The panel has to guess the price of the item in that game. Price is Right rules. Whoever gets the closest to the actual price without going over wins the round. Does everybody understand?
Yeah.
How much is fire materia in Final Fantasy VII Remake? The currency is Gil. Jacob.
700 gil.
Leo.
1,000 gil.
1,000 Gil.
I'm
Suriel.
gonna go 1,200 gil.
1,200 Gil.
I knew you'd do me like this.
I'm sorry. The correct answer is 500 Gil.
Oh.
Nobody gets it. You've all overbid.
None of you did the stinker strategy.
Yeah, I was banking on you being a stinker, Suriel. Okay.
Why?
How much is... Here we go, huge fans. How much is a cinnamon bunny in Undertale? The currency is gold. Jacob.
20 gold.
20 gold. Leo.
50 gold.
So it's like 1,000.
No, I don't think
then I
anything is
got
that
you.
expensive. I'm gonna say 120 gold.
120 gold. The actual retail price of the cinnamon bunny in Undertale, 20 gold. Or, I'm sorry, 25. Sorry, 25. So you're 5 away, Jacob Keller. Sorry. I got confused looking at the numbers. All right. How much?
That's gonna be a big problem if that keeps.
I ain't no math major. All right. How much is the skeleton suit in Super Mario Odyssey? The currency is coins. Skeleton suit in Super Mario Odyssey.
Can we go in a different order?
No, we cannot. I'm sorry. You're lined up this way. The front row of Price is Right.
The skeleton suit is 300 coins.
Okay.
I haven't played it.
Trust me, if you played it...
150.
150?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 5,000 coins.
5,000 coins, says Suriel. He could have said 301 and got the same effect, but this guy plays to win.
That's right.
And it paid off today because the actual retail price is 9,999 coins. Way to go, Suriel.
It's a me, baby.
Okay, here we go. Leo Vader. This is just for you.
1. Okay.
How much is
One of whatever.
How much is the price of a horse reviver in Red Dead Redemption 2?
From the catalog?
Correct.
God, I'm gonna try and say the exact price just to flex, but I might be wrong.
right.
750.
I'm sorry, you flexed and you look like a jerk. The answer is 950, everybody.
Okay,
That's
well, I still got it.
embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Okay, last one. Here we go. The item
I was
is
still closer than anyone else.
The item is a Nintendo Switch. The game, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Currency is bells, as we all know. All right, Jacob Geller.
Oh God, I haven't played. I don't even know what ballpark to be in. 2,000 bells.
2,000 bells, he says, for a Nintendo
What's the
Switch.
item?
A Nintendo Switch.
Oh, I see. Oh,
Pretending he doesn't know the answer.
7,000.
7,000 bells.
Leo's got a big poster of all the Animal Crossing items and their costs just off screen.
Very specific buy. Cereal?
20,000 bells.
20,000 bells. Again,
Doesn't
Cereal's
everything
swinging
cost a
big.
ridiculous amount of bells?
Cereal, it paid off. The actual retail price, 29,980 bells for Nintendo Switch. Cereal's the winner here, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
What's an Animal Crossing quote?
I got a
I hope it's not
Carpe
a B
Diem
sharp.
or something.
Carpe diem, baby!
I'm fishing for catching fish.
Habeas corpus.
All right, question of the week. What do y'all like? All right, I liked... Oh, go ahead.
I liked the games that were popular locally that you didn't know weren't big otherwise.
Yeah, that is good. That is good. I also liked the literary ambition of Last of Us Part 2. That comparison, I think, is interesting. The PS4 load times, I think, is a very specific thing that I'm very interested in. The best PS4 exclusive. Does anybody else have any thoughts?
I do like the literary one, and I like the popular one.
I like the gaming tattoo because we got to see Jacob's midriff.
That was
That's
pretty
true.
cool.
That's actually true.
Yeah.
How often do you see that?
That is true.
Do a
but-
midriff reveal on your channel, Jacob.
Actually, I already have. That was my $1,000 Patreon.
Nice.
When you have a YouTube channel that successful, do you ever feel like you could just release anything and the YouTube algorithm will still pump it to the top?
Yeah, but then the next one after that, thumbs down.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, everyone would stop watching after 5 seconds, and my engagement would tank.
Oh boy. All right. Well, you're the guest. Let's go with it. Let's go with Jaime Victor Negron Serrano with the popular games in your schools and neighborhoods that you later found out weren't as big as you thought growing up. Thank you so much for writing in. And we'll ship out this awesome copy of Mega Man 2, which actually works. By the way, it's a functioning copy and a bunch of Playdead pins. Thank you so much for writing in, everybody. Again, you can support us on Patreon at any tier and write in the future. And now it's time for something we call Get a Load of This. Suriel, do you want to lead the charge?
Yes.
Love
I would. I'm scrolling to fill time while I look for... Here it is. So, apparently last week, they added flick stick controls to the Steam beta. And so what this is another way of using a controller to play first-person shooters on the PC. And it's really weird because it's like this weird... So like what it does is it maps the analog stick to 360-degree turning and it also uses gyro, like the gyroscope on your controller, to get better aiming on a controller. So it works mostly with the PlayStation 4 controller on your PC.
Huh.
And so they have like this weird demonstration of Rainbow Six with it, or at least it was in this tweet by Wario64. And so like he's using like the combination of the gyro and the analog stick, and the way it looks on the screen, it looks like he's using a mouse more so than like a regular analog stick. So it's this really weird thing that I've been wanting to test out since I saw it. And it's because it looks super interesting. I like that they're still kind of doing this kind of experimental thing on with Steam stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a way to play first-person shooters on a controller on Steam and want to try out something weird, check out flick stick controls on Steam beta.
What a weirdo thing. Leo, did you have something?
Yeah. Simple little article here on switcher.gg. Shigeru Miyamoto and other Nintendo directors' salaries are much lower than other industry execs. So just a small little thing, but I thought it was interesting.
Do they have numbers?
Yeah, they've got public numbers for, these companies release in their annual reports or whatever, how much they're paying their top executives. And it's interesting. You've got Shigeru Miyamoto's salary. Does anybody want to guess what it is?
Was it
In
in
20,000
US
bells.
It's in
hang
US
on.
dollars here, yeah.
I'm gonna go with 170,000.
500,000.
$1 million a year.
$1.8 million.
Wow.
I guess
Don't
I don't
worry.
know how much the other execs are making. So maybe Ubisoft head dude is making like $30 million a year.
The numbers they have here are Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision,
Yes.
making $29 million, and Andrew Wilson, CEO of EA, making $36 million. Compared to Shigeru Miyamoto earning 1.8. Obviously all living very comfortably, but interesting. Such a legend
Yeah.
of the industry is making so much less than these people who
It's
are
almost like
not that.
after that point, money is meaningless and workers
Right.
could use it a lot more, but I don't know.
Well, I think it also means that Andrew Wilson is 36 times more important than Shigeru Miyamoto, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
it says here 371 times more important than the average EA employee.
Interesting. Yeah, in retrospect, I guess 170,000 is ridiculously low for a legend like that. But also, it's a weird sign that when I hear that, I was like, oh, I met a millionaire. That's cool. Like, thinking like I met Miyamoto, but like, how many millionaires
cool.
do you think you've all have met in your life?
Wow.
I mean, I bet some of the higher paid professors at my college were probably millionaires.
Do you
Just
think?
kind of like small. I mean, it's like if you went to a public university, their salaries are public, and I know that I took some classes from people making like, $280 plus a year. So
Hey.
it's like, you do that for 30 years? Yeah, money.
Yeah, I want to know if you're a millionaire listening to this, write in, let us know. Did you have a moment when you like tallied the numbers? Were you like watching your total? Does it include assets? Like, when did you have a moment of I'm a millionaire? Or like, is it just like over a quiet meal with your spouse where you realize we're millionaires and you give each other high fives? Like, what is that moment?
You pay for dinner one night and the waiter comes back and hands you your card and says, "Sir, by the way, you are a millionaire."
I looked up your financial.
You were a millionaire, but then you paid for this meal, and now you're back at 999,999.
That's right.
Yeah. Also,
still be on
if
the
you're a
tip, I
millionaire
understand.
and listening to this podcast, please consider donating to our Patreon.
We call it supporting.
Yeah, supporting everything.
Jacob.
Or just make a one-time support, of $1 million if you got it. Yeah.
Jacob Geller, you got one for Get a Load of This?
Yes. So in my position, I watch as a person who makes videos. I watch a lot of other video essays, and many big channels are good. But I ran across a very small channel called Quest Marker the other day, and he had made a video called, and this is a kind of complicated title, so I'm going to try to get it right. Indigeneity, Language, and Representation, Why Radun Hagedun is So Important, which was a video about Assassin's Creed 3 and its protagonist, who was referred to in the game and by most people writing about it as Connor, which was his like kind of white name that he was given after being like, oh, you can't use your Native American name, but it uses it kind of like, if you've seen my essays, to like really talk about the broader history of like indigenous representation in media, and also kind of like in real life, what their story has been in various different places, and talks about kind of all of the pretty horrible things that have happened in Canada specifically. This video focuses on, but it was just like, it was a really, really great, well-produced, well-researched video, and I think at the time making it, the channel had like 400 subscribers. So go watch that. It's a great video.
Yeah, give him the Mega 64-esque bump.
That's right.
Hey, get a load of this, everybody. Destructoid had a story showing off the fact that you can take a Google Maps tour through CD Projekt Red's office in Warsaw, Poland, which is very cool. So I don't think it shows like the development floor specifically, but it's still a lot of like public space. And you just want to like navigate the hallways of CD Projekt Red, see their kitchen, see the mocap area. I'm just a fan of development studios in general, having visited so many. It's cool that everybody can just go in and see like, hey, this is the space where they're making Cyberpunk 2077 right now. And it reminded me too, one of the coolest things that I didn't talk about, was it last week, 2 weeks ago? I guess it was last week, with Half-Life Alyx and the final hours of Half-Life Alyx, that Steam game experience from Jeff Keighley, is they have this amazing thing where it's an isometric view of Valve, of the entire studio. So you can just like click around and look at everybody's desk and like how that floor is actually laid out. It's just like the perfect, I don't know what you want to call it, fix for like, oh, that black box of Valve, what's going on in there? It's like, hey, here's like the most thorough interactive map you could ever ask for an office. Here's exactly what's going on at Valve. And it's a really cool idea.
You can go to Valve's front desk in a virtual reality. In Steam VR, you can go.
Oh, really?
Walk around
You can go
like
to
the first
Valve's
couple
front
rooms.
desk in real life too, but then they'll just ask you to leave.
Probably eventually, yeah.
Yeah, just do whatever you want there in VR. It's just between you and God.
For the community to get a load of this, pulled from the Discord channel, Manic T, not Maniac T, submitted an article from IGN, which is interesting. Cyril, I'm curious to hear your take on it. In this interview, or the article on IGN, they say in an interview with VGC, Nintendo veteran Kensuke Tanabe was asked about the process behind designing new villains for a franchise full of iconic antagonists for Paper Mario: The Origami King, characters like Bowser and Kamek. In response, Tanabe noted that since Paper Mario Sticker Star, it's no longer possible to modify Mario characters or to create original characters that touch on the Mario universe. We need to create original characters with designs that don't involve the Mario universe at all, like we've done with Ollie and the stationary bosses.
Yeah, that's definitely, like, you can definitely notice that, because I like, you're kind of like the one or two companions that kind of are with you for most of the game are like, it's just like a Bob-omb and a Toad.
Yeah.
And so like that part, I mean, there are other partners and stuff, and it's like characters you've met before, but there's definitely like this feeling of it's not as cool to see like someone like Goombella or, you know, like I forget the name, but like the Yoshi with the red hair, basically.
Right.
You definitely feel that part of it. And like, I think partners in general maybe like the weakest aspect of Origami King, because they're not really involved in combat. And so it does feel like this is Mario's journey, and he's just kind of reacting as like someone who doesn't speak to the things happening to him.
Yeah, it's just weird thinking about like that Iwata asked, where they talked about, I think before the messaging was Miyamoto asked the team, like, hey, could you make an RPG but don't create any new characters? And so that's why there were so many Toads and stuff. But now it seems like the messaging since Sticker Star, it's interesting in this interview to have a different take on it, of just that idea of you have to create entirely new ones. You can't keep modifying the old ones.
So like Ollie is like a character that is like this totally original thing, isn't like a Koopa or anything, and then you have the Vellumentals, which are the bosses and stuff, so they can't do like here's, you know, like some other Bowser, right? Like Bowser's brother or whatever. They can't really do anything like that, which I would be very curious to see what the reasoning behind that is, because it doesn't make any sense to me why they would limit themselves that way.
Because they want to keep it tight. They don't want these characters to completely spin out of control. We don't need a Wario and a Waluigi. We don't want more examples of that disaster, right? Because eventually you're going to get Peach. You're going down the road.
Of that
ship has
delinquency.
so sailed on that.
Just let it all go. Just make freaky
Is it
characters.
internally canon with itself already?
Well, they killed Bowsette, right? So she doesn't exist anymore.
You can't even Google it. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. They destroyed all remnants of
Your
Bowsette.
computer blows up.
Yeah,
When you
exactly.
try typing the E, it won't let you if you type in Bowsette without the E.
That's exactly it. Thank you for listening or watching this gigantic episode of the MinnMax Show. Jacob, is there anything you would like to plug, sir?
Sure, I'm just Jacob Geller everywhere, so on YouTube and on Twitter. Go follow me in both those places.
What is your next essay on?
Exclusive Half-Life Alyx and Florence.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah.
I get it.
Great taste.
And some other stuff.
I know where you're going with that, and I get it.
Easy.
Leo, quick, make that video before he does, then we'll get 1 million views.
These games both have women in it.
Bam! Do you like it? Hey, thank you to everybody that supports us on Patreon. Wonderful folks at the $50 tier, like I Am 8-Bit, Bambox, BeatenDownBrian, Zachary Pligge, Rebekah Lang, Mercury Rico Torreno, Brian with a Y, Jawar Hello, Mark Seliga, Andrew Vala, Jesse Vitelli, Ian T. Clark, JT Fells, Andrew Sanford, Ludwig Roque, Matthew Paxson, Steve Bamdead, Time Bomb Tom, Josh Elliott, Yarrow, Tyler Carver, Captain Subs 1, Michael Jakes, and Midnight Satire. Thanks so much, everybody. Be good, have fun, let's go!